Ladies and ladles and jelly spoons, welcome back to another episode. We're doing what we always do every week. I forget what it's called. We're cooked, or we're up Schitt's Creek with a turd for a paddle, something like this. We're doing a weekly show every Sunday. Right now, we've got, of course, Save Chic Jar now. Getting faster at saying that. Adam, my friend, as always. No Angie this week, but today we've got Lily Igla. What's going on?
Hello.
So bad news, everybody. I looked at my analytics. I think most of my people that watch our show are 65 plus. So we'll have to talk really loud and really slow.
Let's not insult our core demographic too much.
They're all sweet. They're mostly ecological doomers, but we're drifting over. I'm trying to get the younger people, so we're gonna be hipper and younger.
Lily is here to nail the Zoomer demographic for us. We did a lot of market research.
Yeah, look at what I'm wearing. I'm obviously hip on the market research. You went to Cuba
these days.
Yeah, I'm all about the analytics. The Cuba trip. Look, Cuba's in trouble right now. They're trying to choke Cuba out. Russia and China came through with some aid, but essentially the 60-year blockade that's been going along, they've hated them from the beginning because communism is a threat to their way of life and their cemented hierarchies that they love so much, where we're all peasants and they're on their fancy boats sailing around. Lily actually went to Cuba with the big hoopla, that the Simon flotilla, right? What was it called?
It was the Nuestra America convoy.
Okay. All right. So tell me, take it from the top. What made you want to go, and what was it like, getting in there? You got your ticket, or do you go with an organization? Tell me a story.
Yeah, I actually got reached out to pretty late into the planning process, like 2 weeks previously. And I got reached out to the People's Forum. People's Forum work with closely with PSL, and they're like a subsidiary of PSL. And they said, "Hey, you're going to Cuba?" And I was like, yes, of course I want to go to Cuba. Because I've been learning about Cuba my entire life. My parents taught me about it. I knew about Fidel Castro and Che Guevara growing up. And I got there, and we were greeted with a large welcoming from the Cuban people, because they're kind and amazing, as everybody says, and that is true through and through. They're just amazing. And we spent 5 days there, 5 very packed days. We traveled all around Havana. We didn't leave Havana. And we met Cubans from like all different areas of backgrounds, farmers. We met children in their schools. We met teachers. We met local, leaders. We got to do a lot. I got to learn a lot. I could talk about it probably for like a good 10 hours straight, maybe all the information that I got. But, it's something that is really hard to properly process on paper. I think you kind of have to go to really understand the Cuban project and how the people that live there feel about it. And also to put into perspective, even if you're like a so-called American leftist, just what your country does to other countries, especially ones as close as Cuba is to ours. So it's crazy. It's a very emotional experience, and it changed my life forever. So really chill, no big deal.
Yeah, no big deal. Just changed my life forever.
Yeah, whatever.
Obviously you come from the land of the vast oceans of parking lots and, Waffle House, like you said, and the Mickey D's and the, what
my
was
first
it
job,
like
God bless.
And Portillo's. He's a Polak from Chicago, Portillo's too.
Okay. I'm always learning.
Sorry, continue.
Polak, St. Louis.
So what?
St. Louis, my mistake.
Okay.
Okay. Oh, really? Polish?
Okay,
Polski. All right.
I can say it.
That's
you
right.
can't, Chris. I can say it.
Sorry. All right. I wish I knew what I was so that I could be in an in-group somewhere. I'm just not. Always an outsider.
That's okay.
But I mean, what's the big difference here? You go down there. I heard the advertising is at a minimum and stuff. Did you notice any big differences from USA to Cuba?
Well, obviously, fundamentally, they care about their people in a way that we do not. And we went to hospitals. We went to the largest pediatric hospital in the country, which is located in Havana. And we got to talk to the doctors there. And of course, the way that Cuba is spoken about by every area of politician, every kind of politician here in the US, that is a shithole. And if they're more progressive, they talk about how it's a shithole because, you know, like their government doesn't care about them, but they really care about the people. They really mean it too, you know, when they say it with flowery language, excuse me. But these buildings are very, very old. They have not been able to maintain them because, you know, genocidal blockade, blah, blah, blah. And so you walk around and like, even as old as these buildings are and as old as their infrastructure is, they still are maintaining a level of care incomparable to the US. We were talking to one person, and my friend, actually Madeline Pendleton, was being buddy. I'm not sure if you know, it's another like on socialist. And this person was complaining about how they weren't able to get medication. They were like, yeah, like this blockade's gotten worse. I can't get medication for my kids, for my doctor. And Madeline was like, yeah, you know, I've never been to a hospital in my entire life. Like I've been so poor my entire life. I've never been to a hospital. And the person was like, what? Like, you're American, what do you mean? And they were like, yeah, like I've never had insurance. I've never been to a hospital. You know, and they were floored. So it's moments like that that happen over and over again because you're talking to people because they've been fed propaganda too. It's not as though the Cuban government is able to keep every single piece of American propaganda. I mean, the American propaganda machine is incredible and extraordinary in its vast amount of money that they put into it, right? And pushed out. So it's moments like that, over and over again with citizens that you're talking to who are just, you know, miserable as they would be living under the conditions they've been living under for literally decades, but that are still amazed by how shitty our government treats us and how pathetic, you know, our infrastructure truly is. Even if the hospitals look new, I mean, they're just money-making machines. They don't actually, the look doesn't mean anything, right? It's a facade, like everything in America. So, yeah, that was my biggest takeaway. The facade of it all.
Yeah, and the people, obviously, what my experience was when as soon as I left home or I left the United States and traveled abroad, I just noticed that humanity was still embedded in other parts of. This is why Angie was right when she said that humans are all terrible. Like they're really, the system makes a big difference. And growing up in the United States, I really felt like people there are a bit wounded, a bit mentally ill, and a bit under pressure. They feel the pressure and they act out in crazy ways. Did you feel like there was still a little bit of like humanity left in the people?
An extraordinary amount. Incomparable. Literally incomparable. Because even when they're being strangled, their basic needs are being met in a way that is just not true for the average American. It's not comparable. And so the average American, you know, is one medical emergency away from homelessness. That most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. Most Americans cannot afford to go to the doctor or whatever. And like I said, like these people are living in poverty. I'm not going to act like they're not, but they're still having their basic needs met in a way that the average poor, of which most Americans are poor, cannot. You know, like you're dying on the street and your government does not give a shit about you. And no one's going to apologize for you or to you for it. Have either of you been there? Have you gotten the chance to go?
No, I don't know if Chris is
I
more
went-
well traveled than I am.
I went to Mexico. I was in Mexico for about 6 months, and I drove from Nuevo Laredo at the border in a shitty car that cost $400 off of Craigslist that started with a screwdriver. And I drove it all the way to Guatemala. It took me 6 months. I got sick and I came home, and it was
the closest.
Awesome. It was awesome.
But I actually had a question because especially in the US, we're told so often, and the discourse on the, you know, minefield that is social media is often about centering Cuban voices. And more often than not, that also means just centering like the Miami-born Cubans. I'm just curious, again, keeping in mind that we appreciate, you know, nuance and contradictions here. What would your average Cuban say about both its government and the blockade? Because I do feel like, you know, sometimes there isn't always the. I'm curious.
Yeah.
No, I got you. The average Cuban. I'm not going to speak for the average Cuban. I will speak for the Cubans that I spoke to. The majority of them, many people will like a tour. That's what do. That's why people outside of it, and they just tell them what to say. So a lot, we're very proud of the Cuban project, wanted it to remain, said over and over again, like, I do not care what the United States wants to do. I will fight to the end, whatever. And that was repeated over and over again. But I met pro-intervention Cubans and I spoke to them at length because, one, I wanted to be able to go back and be like, I did talk to these people. I'm not on a zoo tour. And more importantly, like you guys were talking about earlier, the material conditions affect how people act, and the choices that they make, and the fear they have. People are pro-intervention because they're desperate. The pro-intervention Miamians are different. The majority of them came over, you know, several decades ago. They're multiple generations removed, and many of them aren't. And I'm not going to overgeneralize because I don't think it's a great tool. But a lot of them are just racist, plainly and frankly. And the ones that are not just racist are living their capitalism. And you can do that in another country because your country's not going to be doing that anytime soon. But the pro-intervention Cubans that I spoke to, a lot of them understand what the U.S. wants. They have no qualms. They understand that the U.S. is an imperialist project. They labeled it as such. They're like, yeah, I know they're imperialists. I know they want to invade. I know they want the natural resources, but I'm desperate and I need a change. And I really don't care. And a lot of them said, you know, there's no difference between here and the U.S. And then, of course, I enlightened them to the differences because they are far. The one that I was talking about, this is I think the one that will stick with me the most because it was like I was able to get through, I feel like, the wall that had been created in this gentleman's mind. And we had a great like 2 or 3 hour long conversation. I speak Spanish, so I luckily was able to get like how they actually like, feel properly, right? Cuban Spanish is so pretty. And he was like, yeah, the difference between you and me is you have libertad, you have freedom, liberty, right? I don't have that. I can't say whatever I want about my government on the street. And I was like, well, let me tell you something. Neither can I. And then I got into, I was talking about, you know, the pro-Palestinian student activists, because I think that's the best, most recent example of political suppression. Obviously, like they were horribly suppressed. People are suppressed and oppressed every day for their free speech, right? We just don't hear about it. It doesn't get on the news. Why? Because it's state media. Of course it doesn't get on the news. What are you talking about? And the second thing that really stood with him was I was like, yeah, you know, the border law that I'm sure both of you know about, right? Like the border exception law within 100 miles of the U.S. border, you have different rights. You don't have constitutional rights in the same way, even if you're a U.S. citizen. So I told him, I was like, yeah, like we're talking about how we're going to react if we end up being questioned at the border because they have a right to do that. They have a right to hold us. They have a right to take our electronics away and to search them and to not give them back if they don't want to. And I was like, I don't have a right to a lawyer either. I can't be like, I want a lawyer. I'm not going to answer your questions. I can refuse to answer, but I don't get a lawyer. And he like kind of cocked his head and looked at me. He's like, really? And I was like, yeah, but they don't tell you that because why would they tell you that? And so that was an interesting thing that like kind of changed how he felt too. And he got into inflation. He's like, yeah, after COVID, the price has just been crazy. And I'm like, yeah, that's the whole world. Like you just horrible supply chain disruption. You know, we had that too. He's like, my rent, I can't pay my rent. I'm like, neither can I. My doctor, I can't get medicine. Same thing. I was like, I can't go to the doctor. I was like, you know, it costs like thousands of dollars. And he's like, what? So stuff like that.
The difference being in the U.S., we're not under a blockade or sanctions. We're just under.
We're the richest empire on the planet, the richest, most powerful empire on the planet. So,
well, the reason for both of the misery in Cuba and the United States is all 1% of the population of, you know, USA.
Yes.
Give or take.
Really more like the 0.005%. Like it's such a small amount of people. That are evil or not evil, however you want to frame that.
Well, we did. I said 8 to 12% of the population has dark, at least one of the dark triad personality traits, which is psychopathy, Machiavellianism, and narcissism. So,
and those are all traits that are rewarded in capitalism.
Yes, this is the same conversation that we've been having for a decade now about Donald Trump. I just can't believe he's like this. Like he's so unique.
Right?
No,
he's the best.
Right? He's winning.
He's the exact guy. If it wasn't him, it was going to be Ronald McDonald for sure.
My goat. Yes.
Yeah, some American mascot that we need. That was
But he is like American. Peak American mascot. Donald Trump is peak American, an immigrant who used his wealth and privilege to be racist for decades, to be a pedophile, and to rise to the ranks of the presidency through a reality TV show. That is the most American thing ever.
I will say though,
bald eagle sound effect right there.
We're at a beautiful point though right now where like it's clearly falling apart, and he's kickstarting this collapse, and the desperation, like it's ugly now, but the desperation is in the air. And like Iranians are saying, well, we're just going to wait this out. We're just going to wait and see what happens. And that's gives me some hope. But at the same time, then Delcy Rodriguez is now opening up all of Venezuela to all of America, right? Like every day she's like, yeah, we're going to deport this guy. And that's not good. But
no, and you can actually see in transcripts of her speeches how less and less over these past few months, not few months, almost half a year now, my God, since Maduro was abducted, she speaks about him less and less. You can count the amount of times and the frequency with which she speaks about.
So
yeah,
like it was like a high amount too, like 87 times down to like 7 times, where she's like, oh yeah.
I did want to say, because I got this news notification before we hopped on here, with all the bluster about the Iran and US deal that's now apparently closer than ever, according to the New York Times. It's so convenient because now the S&P futures are now at a record high.
Bro,
it's
every time
watching, this whole thing is just market manipulation. There's no world. I was so
furious when I saw the stock market continue to go up, and I was like desperately trying to figure out why. And like it was a combination of short sellers that got into early, but also just the fact that, so check this out, I probably said this before to Adam, algorithms buy stock blindly based on the news. The news is constantly printing lies that are reiterated by Donald Trump, who is just lying through his teeth, and then he goes and buys stocks based on the stuff that he's saying. So it's just like this vicious cycle of stupidity, like a snake eating its own tail. I don't see how it keeps going. Also, activists, Bill Ackman is an insane psychopath who's buying up stock as a way to keep saving face while everything is going down. And these hedge funds too, all of them are just, everybody's just doubling down, and the fucking stock market keeps going up, but everything is going to shit.
Everything, literally every other metric of the American economy is starting to show yellow warning signs.
The other thing I read was 20% decrease in the dollar against the euro in the last year. So that's huge, and it's hurting me because I have the money and I'm in Europe. It's not good. And so one of I read, this is what they do, because cash sucks now and it's going down, that billionaires are also sinking it back into equities because they're scrambling to find a safe haven for their money as things go away.
Well,
property
we've seen the volatility of the bond market just this past week going crazy.
Do you know what that's about?
Yields are at highs, and again, this is all because they're racing to bonds because of the precarity that other signs of the economy are starting to show. So,
yeah.
But we've been living in a world since 2008 where what I call shareholder Keynesianism is the law of the land, where if, stocks do start to tumble,
buy them back.
Yeah, that's what, Trump will just find a way. He'll just, like, when COVID first hit and he injected $1 trillion into the stock market only for it not to work anyway, because, you can only cool investor fears over a pandemic so much. But I think, that, like what you were saying, Lily, about how Cubans just couldn't comprehend that things are, for most people, are just as bad in the US as they are. Like the world economy has not recovered from the catalyst that was COVID, whether you are a communist nation or a capitalist one.
No.
It's interesting that so for all the ones you did talk to who were more pro-interventionist, were they universally receptive to what you were saying, or?
I didn't push back, unless I felt like it would get somewhere. I'm also not there to change their minds, because I'm just here to talk to them. I genuinely just curious. The guy that I talked to the longest, that I mentioned, the 2-hour long conversation, the pushback only came when his assumptions were incorrect about my own lived experience. Because he would say something and I'd be like, you know what? That's your lived experience. I don't know. I have no idea what it's like to live there. I'm not going to tell you I know more than you and be that kind of American jackass. No, I'm not doing that. That's silly. receptive to what I was saying. Yeah, like people enjoy commiserating, and when I'm like, yeah, I'm broke too, it's crazy, you know, they're like, whoa, it's wild. So they get it, like they appreciate that. I think the most interesting thing about pro-intervention Cubans living in Cuba is that they still name the American empire for what it is. Pro-intervention Cubans in the United States would never call the United States an empire to begin with. Never call it most Americans won't call it an empire, right? Never call it an empire.
Or a regime.
Or a regime. And yeah, so they know, like they still have a better understanding of foreign policy and of like very basic political ideologies in comparison to the average Miami Cuban and the average American, you know? They can have a conversation about the world as it stands in a much more profound way, even if they are pro-intervention. And frankly, you know, all things considered, if you were living the way that the average Cuban has to live, being strangled not only your entire life, but likely your parents' entire lives and your grandparents' lives, what else would you think is the solution? What else are you going to do? I mean, this is also a long-standing thing in Cuban history where Cubans, you know, the American occupation or the saving Cuba, like this is hundreds of years ago now. People were on the side of the Americans, other people weren't, and they went back and forth. This is just how it works. Different opinions.
And you know, there's intelligent people out there that could look at it and say, well, there's a possibility that Cuba or Venezuela, if we get rid of that the United States would treat it like it treated Saudi Arabia, which was given an arrangement to, look, we'll give you oil, we'll make you rich, and you keep your money in our bank accounts, and everything will be great.
And that's it. It's all solved.
But it's like instead of the petrodollar, we could have had the like azúcar dollar or like the sugar dollar.
Made out of real sugar.
But there is, I mean, it's a reductive thing to say, but like generally speaking, from what I understand, is people sort of regard the U.S. relationship to Cuba right up to the revolution, like the 40s and 50s especially, as it just being somewhere between a casino and a brothel for the American business class.
Yes. Through and through.
Is that how most Cubans still remember those years, even if they do?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes. And they also understand their history in a much more profound way too, because like the revolution only just happened. Of course, it's an ongoing revolution, right? But it'd be like the equivalent, like most Americans understand the civil rights movement happened. They can tell you generally when it happened and who the key players are. And they can tell you about George Washington and maybe Lincoln. But like they aren't probably going to be able to tell you about the Spanish Civil War. They aren't going to be able to tell you about when we took California and Texas and all that land. They probably aren't going to know much about, you know what I'm saying? So like, yeah, they understand like their families lived through Batista, right? Their families lived through Batista, through Castro. Their ancestors likely were slaves, a lot of them. The literacy campaign that made Cuba literate is something that these people's families went through and lived through. So yeah, they have a better historical understanding, and also their country cares about them having a better historical understanding too. It's something that's like very heavily drilled into them. You know, that they were colonized, they were a colony, and they were just traded around to the benefit of whoever was able to take them at any given time.
So then, oh no, go on, Chris, go on.
Well, I was just saying the literacy rate's higher than the United States.
Yes,
for one thing. Was that noticeable? Were these people were educated?
Yes, of course. Well, they're educated. Their schooling is free, right? The amount of doctors in Cuba per like capita is insane. Like there's a doctor for every single neighborhood. They make house visits. So your doctor comes to your house and visits you. Yeah, the literacy rates are insane. The infant mortality rates are insanely low. They had a huge spike recently because of the blockade. Thousands of infants died that didn't have to die because of the lack of fuel. One of the nights that I was there, I could like actually cry because it made me so sad. We lost power for like maybe 20 hours straight. It might have been a little bit more than that. And the power came back on, and articles came out. It was like, yeah, all these people died last night because they were on ventilators and their ventilators shut off, and that was it. And they couldn't keep going with the chest compressions. The doctors that manually would compress these people couldn't keep doing it. It was too long. And a lot of people died. And so like, that's the other thing. You go to this place and you literally are living through, we were very privileged. We stayed at a nonprofit. that was able to maintain a lot more electricity for us because they had solar panels. So we weren't even living how the average Cuban was living or is living, right? But nonetheless, you go out and you talk to people and you're like, how do you feel? Like, whatever. And they're still smiling. And they're like, oh, this is just my life. This is literally just how I've lived. And it's really bad right now, but what are you going to do? And you just keep chatting with them. It's just crazy. Like I was talking about this on another podcast called No Politic Here with two amazing creators, Chris Kunzler and Isaac. I forget his last name, but I think we need to make tons of trips. We need to get the average American down to Cuba. Like, I swear to God, because there is no better example of American empire than Cuba as it is right now and as it has been. And we can get into the subpoenas now if you want to, but that's a perfect example, right? Going down and taking it to Cuba, and you're going to get subpoenaed for it because we're going to keep fucking starving these people whether you like it or not. Okay?
Yeah.
You're going to get subpoenaed.
Like, I will continue to work for nothing, for peanuts, to do this show, to do my articles, we're going to get with my friends and I'm going after the USA. I don't like them. It's personal. They ruined everybody's life that I know with their shitty system. My friends, family, cousins, extended family, everybody's been totally screwed. And then America as a whole. And now we've been screwing over the entire world as well. I just hate it. I interviewed a guy from Gaza the other day, and he was still super chipper and upbeat, but the story he told me was terrible. It was fucking terrible. And it's, he had a house, and then he was like, oh, we don't talk about that because they burned it down a few years ago, and now we live over here. And he just got his degree. Then a few days later, they bombed the university that he went to school that got the degree. And he was sitting there talking to me, and he's just the nicest kid, 22 years old. He's got his whole life ahead of him. I'm in it for the long haul. Fuck these people. Sorry, but it really.
Speak your truth, Chris.
You're living in the safety of Deutschland.
Yeah, exactly.
Not really. Yeah.
Talk about safety. Talk about Zionists. The post-Nazi Germany is a wild place to be. I cannot imagine.
Yeah. Well, they say the biggest immigration. So I got a friend of a friend of my wife. I got a friend who is an Israeli who came apparently after the war broke out because they didn't feel safe. And so they came to Germany, and come to find out that this is the number one place they're going to seek refuge from all this crazy shit that's going on.
The irony of it all.
My vet was a Zionist, and he was treating my dog, and then nice guy, hippie guy. And then he comes back over and he's like, yeah, Israel's getting attacked. I guess we need to stand with Israel more than ever before. And I was like, all right.
Was he Israeli, or was he just
I think he's from somewhere else, but he's was very interested in that state.
Is it just this like collective guilt that your average German feels that they, even if they aren't
well, there's part of that, they have the fake left-wing thing where they are pro-Zionist for some reason. They're like,
the Rosa Luxemburg Institute that's simping for.
It's not that. It's called the New Left or something. It's some I forget, but it's a German organization. Fuck, what is the name? I don't know. It's 1 a.m. here. Nevertheless, they're not anti-imperialist or anti-colonialist. They're just like anti-racism, all this kind of normal stuff. Liberals,
social
and
Democrats.
Then but posing as like a radical Antifa style group. And anyway, they're down with they can commit genocide. That's fine. Everybody else can't, though.
Yeah, only them. They get to pass it.
They're socialists in the tradition of the Kaiser, where we want everyone to have health care, but we're also gonna make sure we go to the empire.
Oh my God, more German accent. I love it.
Yeah.
But I actually wanted to ask you one more question, Lily, just circling back. When you were talking about the historically fluent Cubans who obviously know a lot more about world history than your average American does, even those who clearly have more complex feelings about their current government, to say the least, can they still hold that there were positive contributions made by the revolution?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, in a way that, once again, I'm gonna compare them to Miami Cubans, but it's anybody outside of Cuba, because this is an opinion held around the world about people, or by people from countries that are allied against the Cuban Revolution, which is the majority of the planet, right? Um, they are capable of looking at you and being like, yeah, I know we had slaves and that was horrible. And I'm glad we don't anymore. And I know we couldn't read because my family couldn't read and now they can read. And I know this and this and this. So those are all, like we talked about, contradictions in their mind, right? Like as they're talking to me, talking about potential intervention, they understand all of these benefits. And yet still they're like, I just, this is just how I feel. And I get all that. That's all fine. I understand all of that. But this is how I feel. This is my reality. Yeah, they can deal with contradictions.
What happened when you
Tony Montana? Sorry, continue.
What happened when you got back? Was there a big kerfuffle when you got back to the?
I was lucky. I was not stopped. I really thought I was going to be, and I was a bit nervous about it. Luckily, I'm good with confrontation, so maybe it would have been fine. We'll find out in the future because they're only going to keep doing hyping these up more. These confrontations with activists at the borders. I didn't take my phone, nothing, which was great. And I got back, and then I saw the media kerfuffle. Talk about kerfuffles! Everyone got so upset that we went down there, and I didn't think it'd be that well covered, but Hassan went, so naturally, that's how it worked out. And you talked about like the 5-star hotels. My group did not stay at a 5-star hotel, but lots of other groups stayed at nice hotels because it's how the sanctions work. You have to stay at certain hotels, blah, 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 blah. Okay, whatever. But yeah, I was very happy because I was able to raise money to go take the supplies. That's what I cared about more than anything. I was like, take the supplies down there, contribute in some material way. And upon getting back, like I said, it changed my perspective a lot. It changed how I felt. But I was fine. I'm safe and I'm okay. And then upon last night, upon hearing about the subpoenaing of Hassan Piker, Medea Benjamin, and then therefore all of the partner organizations that were involved in it by the FBI, I got a little antsy. But like I said before we started recording, I went and filled my belly with greasy Waffle House food because I'm lucky enough to be in a city with Waffle House right now. And I really thought about it, and I was like, well, all of these things are scare tactics. Obviously, the Trump administration cares about fright more than anything, flooding the zone, making you afraid to speak out. That's what fascists do. Like, we're all well aware of that here. And that doesn't mean that you stop, because you should feel so lucky that you even have the ability to say something or do anything. Like, that is the very bare minimum that we can do, right? As people that benefit from this empire in some material way.
Yeah.
So yeah,
absolutely.
If I get subpoenaed, then that's what happens. And I get a lawyer and they help me because I'm lucky enough to have access to that. And we'll figure it out.
Yeah. You can't, what are you going to do? Back down? Once you strike a chord and you struck a chord, then you dig in. That's the time to dig in and never quit.
Well,
Besides, the world we grew up in is dead. Like, we're not going back to the thing, and unless somebody does something, we're screwed.
No, all we need to do is elect Gavin Newsom in 2028, and the world will be exactly as it was in 2016, Chris. Every American is pining for, like, to go back to 2015 life. But my understanding, I don't know what the legal counsel before your trip was, but my understanding was one of the only loopholes Americans can use to go to Cuba is if their trip is in service of, like, doing good for
the Cuban people.
Yeah, I don't know if that's intentionally vague enough that you can find that loophole, but was that the rationale where people were like,
Gavin Newsom, everybody.
God, I hate him. I hate him so much, guys. I'm so glad I don't live in California anymore. I don't have to be in his general vicinity. Yeah, there are several ways you can get a visa to Cuba. They're very strict. Like, when I was leaving the airport, they were like, okay, tell us where you're staying, give us the address, tell us why you're going. So even the people within the airport, like, they know that they need to be like that. There are several ways you can go with a visa. That's one that we did. Yeah, support and help for the Cuban people. And it is generally vague. But we did do that. That's all we did the whole time. We didn't party. We were very on it. Don't worry. And we brought the aid and we talked to the people and we helped the people. It was beautiful.
Did you get to see Kneecap?
Yeah, we saw Kneecap. And don't worry, they have concerts there all the time. Okay, the Kneecap concert was exactly 10 minutes long. And they did their set after a Cuban group went up. And then after they ended, another Cuban group went up there. So
that's pretty cool.
Everyone got in a tizzy about that too. I was like,
I like that. I like the group.
Poor people
They're
can't have nice things.
Yeah.
That's literally
Can
what
we
it
have
was.
nice things? Where do you think I got this jacket? I stole this jacket from a hobo.
Well,
what were you going to say?
Someone's like, oh, how you're a socialist when you have a nice jacket, hypocrite much?
Yes. Socialism is when no iPhone.
You know, I did all this. I got this shirt, I got the coat, and I cut my hair real short because I'm like, I just want to blend in with the rest of the drones. So
Deutschlanders.
Yeah. I just want to hide.
So you're saying I would stick out like a sore thumb in Germany?
You
look biblical, Adam. So yes,
you look biblical. He's like Italian Jesus. We love him.
Literally.
I'm white. I look like white evangelical Jesus. That's Jesus was Palestinian, everybody.
In the paintings, but in the Mormon paintings at the Mormon church, you do look like the Jesus.
So Lily, I don't know if you've listened to our previous streams. We have a recurring thing where we just keep circling back to Mormons for some reason.
Somehow. I don't know.
Good. We should all be talking about Mormons more often.
We should all be talking about Mormons more often. And I can't believe I've neglected to share this anecdote before, but on Christmas, because I'm currently in between jobs, to use the nice euphemism, and my aunt was like, Adam, I found a job for you. And then she pulls up this picture where there's like a meet Jesus experience in Utah for like, it's like meet Santa Claus, but like your kids get to come up and meet Jesus. And I was like, that is that's a very Mormon thing to do. Yeah. Okay. I send this to Angie,
you gotta go.
but
yeah. I thought you said meet Jesus. You're going to meet Jesus. Isn't that what somebody tells you right before they kill you?
Did anybody here grow up?
That's it.
Lily, I'm guessing you were also raised Catholic.
Oh, no, I was not.
Okay,
I was raised by 2 Quaker Buddhists.
Oh, that is so much better.
God bless. Lucky me. Yeah, but they had to. It is. Well, they both deconstructed them. My dad was raised Pentecostal, evangelical. My mom was raised Catholic. And so they both have like leftover cultural, interpersonal trauma from that, obviously, as you both understand.
Yeah.
They did not pass on their religious trauma to me, I don't think. I'm very lucky for that. But yeah, like they talked about the shame they have associated with, thinking God is watching you all the time and going to hell. And I was like, I'm so glad I've never had to think about any of that. Like, I'm very lucky, very lucky. I'm sorry that you had to do that.
And the fact that they were Quakers makes sense why they educated you on names like Che and Lenin and
That's amazing.
Yes, precisely.
That's amazing.
Yeah. You guys would love them.
Oh, I
bring them on.
Yeah.
Bring
literally
them on,
right? Next week. We'll have Lily's parents.
Looking forward to your family.
The Iglas.
The Igla family stream.
Right.
But I wanted to has anybody here seen how Kevin O'Leary is trying to build that data center in Utah? That again,
yes. And they hate it.
They hate it. They hate it, as anybody would. And this is not an issue that, in a time of increasing divisiveness and polarization, this is for most constituents, both Democrats and Republicans and everybody out beyond that binary, they hate this. But I send this to Angie. There was some legislator in Utah declared a, quote, countrywide day of prayer for those who are dealing with power shortages from data center usages in Utah. And I was like, this is what actually existing Mormonism looks like. You just pray.
Yes.
You pray.
Remember when they hated black people? And then they were like, by the way, never mind. We don't hate black people. That's not cute anymore. We never hated black people, guys.
It wasn't even just that. It was, they specifically said that in the Mormon theology, God punished, like if your skin was black, it was punishment for being an angel who was neutral in the battle between good and evil of Jesus and Satan or whatever.
I grew up on weekends going to the Mormon church with my aunt. My aunt was Mormon, and there was a black guy one time. There was one black guy. I do remember that. But for the most part, it's the most white bread thing you've ever seen. And these people exist in the desert, and they're really well known for working agency jobs like FBI and CIA and working at Lockheed Martin and stuff. They're very punctual, and they don't drink, and they don't even drink caffeine.
They're well trained.
They're
from birth to CIA job.
Yeah, they're so disciplined and bureaucratic. It's crazy.
Our best family friends growing up were Mormons until they realized they couldn't convert us out of Catholicism. So then they stopped being our friends and moved to a trailer in the middle of the woods. I'm not making that up. But the husband actually converted to Mormonism for the woman. and he hid a secret stash of Diet Coke in the garage because they kept churning out kids, and he was just getting between that and working. He was so exhausted, so he would like sneak Diet Coke when his wife wasn't looking.
Yeah, you can't have Diet Coke if you're Mormon.
No.
Yeah, you can. You can drink soda.
No
but
caffeine,
not
though.
Oh yeah, because they do all. Have you seen that their soda shops that they have? Have you seen
the dirty
these? And they
soda
put cream
trends,
in there? No.
right?
Oh, Chris, you got to get on
What is
this.
it?
They have entire because they can't have coffee, right? So they have soda shops, and they go to I forget what they're called, but they have funny names. And they go and they customize their sodas, and they put cream in their sodas like it's a coffee, and they make it. Yeah, it's an experience.
But it's taking on everywhere now. It's if you go to like just even a corporate fast food place, they will offer you like have a dirty soda where it's like just dirty Coke or dirty Pepsi, and it's just coffee creamer, and it just sounds like
Chris, you need to get back to the U.S. so you can experience.
Don't you miss the glory of America?
I've been
putting sweets and more sweets,
dude. I've been gone for 7 or maybe 8 years, something like that. Long time now. I'd never gone back. I'm never going back. You guys are crazy. I don't know what you're waiting for. I don't know what
the subpoena.
Yeah, the subpoena should do it. I put out an article a month ago or something about all the detention facilities. The only logical conclusion that's left for them is to lock up fucking people who are left wing and and they'll lock up the fucking liberals. They'll lock up anybody. And to do that, because this is domestically they're fucked. Their entire supply chain relies on foreign labor. What else are they going to do? Like, there's going to be massive civil unrest. They keep making all these choke points in places where we need fertilizer and oil and gasoline, and China's hanging on to theirs, and Russia is hanging on to theirs, and the economy is about to collapse, and the housing market is unsustainable. And sorry. Adam, you're here to stop me when I go on. My wife usually goes, "Okay, that's enough."
I mean, no, I'm listening to everything you're saying. These are the things we are living every day. I did have one question though, Lily, because I've met some fairly religious Cuban Americans in my time. Did the subject of religion ever come up in your time?
Yeah, all the time. Yeah, because like they're liberation theologists, right? Like. Liberation theology is a thing. I think technically less so in Cuba. Maybe I'm wrong about that, but there was a time in the revolution where they weren't as focused on religion, and then Christians and Catholics alike in Cuba, went to Castro and they were like, "You need to care about us because we're going to be doing the work too." And so they did, and that mattered. And it's Latin America. Religion is a very, very big thing. Liberation theology is a really fascinating thing to learn about and read about as well, and it's something that I think, especially the left in America, doesn't really understand. Most of the left here doesn't read. So you can say liberation theology and they're like, well, you can't be a Marxist and be religious. And it's like, I can't do this right now.
That is it's a huge staple in Latin America.
Reading hurts.
Reading.
Ouch.
Ouch. What do you mean? What is this? Tell me about it. I don't know if I know about this. Tell
liberation theology?
Yes.
Get into it, Adam.
I mean, I don't know. You could probably speak to it more than I could, but I mean, in Catholicism, in especially South and Central America, there was a theologian, I forget his name, Oscar Romero, maybe. He crafted this doctrine that married Catholic social teachings. And that is the one thing, as someone who was raised Catholic, I will give them credit for, is the social messaging of Catholicism for all the contradictions within its historical practice, and the fact that the Vatican is like one of the wealthiest entities in history. It does teach you to care for others. And that's where this, the backbone of liberation theology is preferential treatment for the poor, which is that, rather than focusing on saving the souls of the impoverished, it is all about lifting them up in the modern here and now. And the last two popes we've had, both the previous one and the current one, have been influenced by this strain of liberation theology. And you can see it both rhetorically and I'm going to start crying, but the last pope spent, sorry, the last pope spent every single night on the phone, or it was either once a week or once a day, talking to the people of the Holy Family Church in Gaza, which is the only Catholic church in Gaza.
Yeah. I can imagine what you're going to say. Yeah,
okay,
I know.
Adam.
It's,
I know.
just as
It's a departure from the what do we have now in the United States? What's it? The prosperity gospel.
Yeah, and I'll switch to a funny topic so I don't cry.
I'm trying.
No, thank you.
I don't want to make you cry, man.
No, it's okay. It's okay. But the Erica Kirk, for example, is a Catholic, and Charlie Kirk thought about converting to Catholicism. And there's this meme where it's like Catholics in Latin America, and it's a picture of Lenin versus Catholics in the United States, and it's just literally Adolf Hitler. Because that, sadly, again, going back to how material conditions will shape one's reality, when you are thriving from the unequal exchange of the world, when you are living in the spoils of empire, your theology is going to be more, deterministic, and God is just going to give you what you want, and everything happens for a reason. And we need to pray for those poor people in X country and do missionary work, etc. Whereas the Catholicism in these countries that are being ravaged by colonialism, neocolonialism, and imperialism, theirs is a very distinct anti-colonial, pro-poverty doctrine. And, and not pro-poverty, people who live in poverty. And I think, there's a really good, if you just search on Apple Podcasts, you can find some really good explanations for what liberation theology is all about. So I recommend everybody here does that. Yeah. But I think, like to Lily's point, we hear a lot, and this is fascinating stuff. The US deployed Christians very strategically, especially Catholics, because so much of Eastern Europe was Catholic. They had these priests who were on the CIA payroll making up stories about what communist countries were doing to Christians. Like there's that Nazi lie I see some people sharing, oh, the Bolsheviks killed 60 million Christians. That's just patently false. Like there is actually really funny, darkly comic misinformation that was being spread by the church in parts of the USSR when collectivization was happening, that because communists are all against the church and institutionalized religion, they're going to collectivize your wives, which means they're going to force your marriage to end and everyone's going to have to wife share.
Yeah, like abolition of the family. They were like, they're going to abolish your family. Your family will be abolished. No more family.
And, like it's fascinating when you read, and even Italy, for example, Italy had the largest communist party in Europe because the communists were pivotal to defeating the fascists. Like it was communist partisans that killed Mussolini and his mistress. They were very popular. So the CIA launched what is called Operation Gladio, which was this concerted effort by using every mechanism from the church to the mafia to make sure that the communists did not win the election. And this came in the form, this is a true story, you can look it up. Churches, Catholic churches in the United States in the 1940s, when Italy was going to have its first post-war election, were telling their largely Catholic congregation, largely Italian congregations, to write back home and warn them not to vote communists, because if they did, the church would lose all of its sanctity and you would no longer have your rights as a Catholic. This was something that the sure that Italian democracy, unperturbed with the danger of a communist party victory. So the Catholic Church, and the same thing with Poland, unfortunately. Like there are a lot of, the solidarity movement, which was started out as very real and organic, and then eventually grew closer to the church.
And was also co-opted by Ronald Reagan and the CIA, and was funded by them.
Yeah, there's a very good book by a Polish economist, Kawelek, I think, who advised. He was a socialist who advised solidarity in their early years, but then he literally wrote a book called Solidarity from Solidarity to Sellout, I think it was called, just about how there was a lot of hope for that trade union movement that was being helped up by the church, that it would create a more human version of socialism that, frankly, most people in Eastern Europe wanted. That most people in Eastern Europe did not want to return to capitalism. It's like what you were saying with Cuba, right? How even today, people in these countries will sort of hold these contradictory truths where we valued, things like full employment and free housing and guaranteed, but we
medical
did
care
want
and education.
Right. Like they did want change, but like I think Poland's actually, in terms of former communist countries, they have one of the highest rates in terms of it being more split between things were better.
Yes. Well, and the fact that they are the most US aligned of the Eastern Bloc is also definitely relevant to that too. The most US aligned of the Eastern Bloc, they also like didn't have good socialism in comparison to the rest, right? Because like it was different with every single Soviet republic. Like every single person's individual experience is different. Every single country's individual experience is different. They had a lot of corruption. And there's also like the nationalist thing of it all. Like Poland barely got to have their own state. And a lot of people really care about that. I'm not a nationalist. I don't care. My family left before the USSR was founded. So like, I don't have any personal experience with that, but I get a lot of Polish people that find my account, find out that I'm part Polish. And they're like, how can you be spreading these socialist communist lies about your people? And I'm like, I don't have an allegiance to Poland as a nation. I'm like, the Polish culture and the things I care about and like about my Polish heritage existed long before the nation state of Poland did. Like, it does not matter to me. But I will happily tell you this, that, and the other, because a lot of them are like Gen Z like me. And so they've lived only through neoliberalism. And the Polish government's extremely right-wing. The Polish government is, extremely racist and xenophobic. There was a thing that was happening a couple of years ago where they would like shoot people at the border. Just like shoot them dead. They had like a law for that. Like, yeah, you come to the country, we're shooting you. And they loved it. Like you interview people on the street and they'd be like, I think this is what we have to do, And you're like, I can see why you wouldn't be very into communists. I can see that.
Well, I've listened to a lecture, they've done studies that show that those who say it, like the age group that tends to have the most negative feelings towards the People's Republic of Poland tend to be those who never actually lived during that time at all.
Yes. Yes, exactly, because they've been fed from the government. And don't get me wrong, there were negative experiences. I'm not an absolutist, but the positives outweigh the negatives. You even say, I've said to Polish Gen Zers, I'm like, yeah, the Soviet Union like liberated you from Nazi Germany. Like, we weren't liberated. They occupied us right after. And okay, well, if you wanted all of you to die, because that was the goal of the Nazis, was to kill every single Slavic person they encountered. That was the goal, right? Like, this is an interesting thing too, because a lot of Polish people are Catholic. And as you are both well aware, like the Jewish communities were incredibly separated from the Polish, the Polish people otherwise, right? So I'm like, but you forget, because you're Gen Z and maybe you don't want to know, or maybe you're a Nazi covertly, I can't gauge that, is that they wanted to kill all of us. The Jews were the highest level target, but all Slavic people, like, I'm not Slavic, I'm Central European. I'm like, I don't care. I can't do this. Like, it's just too much. It's a brick wall sometimes. It really is.
Germany was the same. Like, they didn't get the best version of socialism that they could have gotten in order to set a good example for people, because when it ended, they were rightfully happy. But they had enshrined in their constitution in Eastern Germany things like environmental laws that they didn't have in the West. But at the same time, they didn't abide by those environmental laws. And they had this Bitterfeld, big pollution problem that they had, sulfur dioxide, stuff like this. And it was, persistent, and it's still a problem today and stuff. So, and the women's rights thing too, they were past West Germany in the enshrined equality laws for women.
Oh, we lost
But but it was, it comes and it goes. And but yeah, they just they didn't get the best version. And I would assume Poland's maybe the same, or any of these other states.
But even so, they still lived a better life than they would have under the alternative, which was Nazism. So that's really all that matters, Like, that's the only counter argument you really have to give. It's like, okay, well, if you want to be ruled by Nazis, then you're a Nazi, and we're not going to have any kind of conversation.
Yeah. Yugoslavia was also one, I think it has a high rate of people saying things were better under, because what happened in the 90s with them was terrible.
Yes.
And they're continued. They're like, my wife goes to Bosnia for like her science job and stuff. She's working in science, working in organic agriculture. They have Mein Kampf on the bookshelves there. They've and people at the left, more like people who are aligned with organic agriculture, you would think are more left leaning, but they're all nationalists. They're all, and they don't care what it takes. And they see these strong men as big, I don't know, big heroes of some kind.
But then you guys were both saying earlier, the material conditions, if your people are genocided, unfortunately, as we've seen with the Zionists of Israel, who, obviously hated the Jews that were anti-Zionist, as you're probably well aware. But yeah, the Bosnian genocide was one of the most horrific things you can read about. I mean, people are paying to assassinate people in Sarajevo. And a fun fact, actually, St. Louis is the highest amount of Bosnians in the world outside of Bosnia, I think. So we took in a lot of, so I grew up with a lot of Bosnians, and they're my first exposure to Muslim people, and my first exposure to genocide as a concept, I think. I learned about Bosnian genocide before I learned about the Holocaust, actually. But yeah, that's what happens. You become a nationalist because you're like, what else can I do? I have to be protectivist.
I see that.
It's
And
horrible.
it's clear. And there's a tough guy mentality with the Bosnians, she says. I know somebody she works with is also from Bosnia. They got to be tough. They're raised tough.
Yeah.
And because they went through hell, especially this guy he's our age. So he definitely went through it. But it was fascinating to have learned about this recently. Was a communist country, wonderful. They had a good run, was doing fine. In GDP, 7% year over year, something ridiculous, doing really well. Creating things, had a good car that they made. And then lo and behold, they had some bad run of luck. I forget what it was. And then decided to take that first loan from the IMF. And then that was it. They were on the debt treadmill. And then slowly but surely we stoked, the CIA most likely. I forgot what, I didn't read up on it, but I know they're involved. Stoked nationalistic tensions among who is it there? The Montenegros, the Croatians, the Croats, the Slovenians, the Kosovoians, this is the most artificial state out of all of them, and against the Serbians. And the Serbians, of course, are famously with the Cyrillic Russian style lettering, even though they're not actually touching Russia. So there's countries in between Serbia and Russia, but their alphabet's the same. So I found that to be interesting.
Oh, that is interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so their influence, the Russian influence, is always very, very strong. And then when the Serbians, when the Yugoslavia fell, Serbians were the most upset. They wanted to keep their power because they were the most benefited from the arrangements. Muslims, I think, were slightly, but it was a communist thing. So most people got along. So, but it's worse now than it's ever been before. It's a lot like Gaddafi, right, in Libya, where they're like, we got to save them from their horrible system. And then we go in there and now everything's way worse.
Yeah, my connection went, I don't know what's going on.
I missed you.
What did I miss?
Well, and we're talking about Serbia and Croatia and all that jazz. And that's the thing too. So I went to Croatia a couple of years ago, and it's the same thing that's happening in Croatia, what's happening all over the world, which is horrible gentrification, lack of resources, lack of care. But as is the case in Europe and is not the case in the US, these countries still have a lot more infrastructure for their citizens in comparison to us, because they, were forced to do some social democratic things in order to not stoke the flames of more revolution across Europe, right? So they still get free university from what I recall in Croatia. But their housing prices are insane. Nobody can afford to live. The jobs are horrible. People have to immigrate out. And it's the case all over the Eastern Bloc, all the time.
When you were there, did you ask folks about the Yugoslavia years at all, or?
Oh,
I love to ask people
that
somewhere. So
I didn't really get into that conversation topic when I was there. I was there on vacation. But I should have. I hope I get to go back.
When you're on vacation, you still need to be out there bothering the people, getting the data for us.
I agree. I should have. Damn, I was 20. It was a different time.
Yeah, different time. Still, that's interesting.
Well, I remember reading, I think it was Cosmopod had a really good episode on Yugoslavia where they talk, again, when we talk about the socialism of Eastern Europe, we can't gloss over the fact there were a lot of inefficiencies, there were a lot of deficiencies that made those systems inherently unstable and unsustainable. But I remember the Yugoslav experiment was interesting because it moved away from the command economy. So the way one of the hosts described it was socialism in one factory, where every factory was self-managed, but that meant that even if there was a problem with like the inputs or the raw materials, if you didn't have that, your factory would shutter until you had what you needed, but you would still get full pay, which is great, don't get me wrong, but you can't really create an entire national economy where everyone's getting paid without producing anything. That was one of those.
Calling sick today, boss. And I think I'm going to call in sick next week too.
Well, that's also, the Bolsheviks had problems because they also experimented early on with, factory self-management, but then they realized that factories would just like vote to give themselves vacations all the time and also not make anything. So like, okay, we got to commit. This is when the authoritarianism started, is when they're like, oh, actually, we do kind of need to manage these things.
Well, you guys are both eternally brighter than me, I think, as far as your history and stuff. So tell me a little bit. So
no.
China and Russia and all these implementations, the Yugoslavia model, all these implementations, obviously China's the winner because they have the data or whatever, but what were the pros and cons of like some of each of these? Like Adam knows about the Soviets, right?
I'm sure Lily knows more than I do. I'm just a casual learner, but the Soviets, when it comes to the Soviets, the thing, there's a reason that every single underdeveloped country, especially in the Cold War, looked to the Soviet model, because what it achieved was just literally unthinkable in terms of planning out your economy and being able to raise the living standards of the entire country while developing industry that had never been done before, to actually take control of your economy. There is a really good book called Socialism Betrayed that goes into, why the Soviet Union fell. And the authors, two historians from Yale, had this incredible analogy I always think back on. A capitalist economy is equivalent to boat travel on a river. It's very easy. You just sort of let everything go. You let the forces of nature take control of, wherever you're going, and then you just hop up at your destination. Building socialism is like air travel. It is way more complicated. You have to do a lot of trial and error to get there successfully. But that doesn't mean that it's inferior to river travel. If anything, it's better because it's more efficient and all that. So, the Soviets, when they were trying to build an economy that had never been done before, of course, they were going to break a few eggs. Of course, there was going to be missteps along the way. But what they did was so unbelievably effective that every single country for many years, including, that was actually one of the faults of the Eastern Bloc, was that they relied too hard on the command economy. And part of the problem with that is when you do that, you do that at the expense of focusing on your lighter industry. So consumer goods were not readily available in the USSR. And that is part of the reason why, that lack of a soft industry did hurt them. And that's something that China has learned from. When we talk about like what we were talking about the other week ago with the Chinese BYD cars, like those are insane. The Chinese EVs are vastly better and cheaper than anything that the US produces, which is, it's so funny, especially, in California, you go around and you see all these hideous Tesla trucks just everywhere. And because it's like the luxury EV that everyone has to have, right? But that's something that China learned from the USSR, is you can't just, and that's what, when Deng Xiaoping said, you need to hold on to the big ones, but let the little ones escape. That's what he meant. He meant, recede state control of your consumer goods that aren't necessarily essential, while still maintaining state-owned enterprises of the big industries that can really be a pillar of your economy.
And this is where the Sino-Soviet split comes in, right? That is like so integral to the history of the USSR and then the history of China as well, because and this is like within Marxism, there are lots of different kinds of Marxists, right? And there are Marxists who don't believe China is socialist, and there are Marxists who do, and there are Marxists who teeter on both, and they have their own opinions. And I'm fascinated by all of it. I think it's all very interesting, and I have so much to learn. But Dengism is what Adam's talking about, right? So like Dengism comes in, and then you get two more leaders, and then you get Xi Jinping, and now you have his Xi Jinping thought, right? Which is different as well. So like, people will argue for or against revisionism and Marxism. Marxism like has some very core tenets to it, and Maoism I think is technically a kind of revisionism because he's revising it to China's standards, right? Like Chinese socialism, Maoism, whatever. And Leninism is another form of Marxism. It's different. There are lots of Marxists who don't like Marxism, Leninism, and they're like, I just don't like authoritarianism. Those are the anti-authoritarian compatible leftists. But my answer is always is China is still standing. That is it. The USSR is not here anymore. And yes, they were illegally dissolved. And yes, it was not of their desire to become revisionists and then have everything collapse. And most of their citizenry wanted to stay, right? Like, which is crazy when you learn that for the first time. You're like, oh, I was lied to my entire life. That's crazy. That's so wild.
And it's funny how these fractures still are. Okay, Angie might join us in 5 minutes, so that's good.
Oh, cool! Awesome. She's awesome. We'll have a nice time.
That's what I think is so funny. I mean, I won't talk about the terminally online nonsense that's been happening on Instagram and the tanky sphere, but I think it's so funny when people still accuse, like, oh, I'm a Trotskyist, I'm a Stalinist, I'm a Maoist. It's like these fractures are so irrelevant to our modern world. Like, the whole split between Trotsky and Stalin really was about Trotsky wanting to export the revolution to the world, and Stalin saying, in so many words, that is not possible. And right after the Bolsheviks took power, again, we keep going back to Poland, but right after the Bolsheviks took power, there was a very strong desire in certain circles to push towards Poland, to spread the communist revolution to Europe. And Lenin thought about it, but the main thing that stopped him was that the troops who had just gotten back from the trenches in World War I were not ready to go on fighting. So it was just a realistic calculation that, no, we can't just do this. We can't just, we can't just force all the people who we said we would bring peace to fight another war. And that Trotsky had a lot of personal defects to his character as well. He was arrogant. He was actually one of the least liked Bolsheviks because he was such a, narcissistic, insufferable twat. That's not to say he did not make valuable intellectual contributions. He absolutely did, but just interpersonally.
He led the Red Army. He led the Red Army.
He was part and parcel to the Red Army defeating basically the entire imperialist world when they invaded Russia. So, and even when when people say China's revisionist, I think it comes from this oversimplified Western thought that socialism is just a switch you can flip on and off. And
I saw Vijay Prashad say this. He says it's a protracted process. It's not a thing that you go on and off. And this is anybody who proposes these arguments. A lot of them are doing it because they want to fit in or they want to, have a thing. But I'll take any step in the right direction that works. And I'll take a dumb liberal who's at the homeless camp feeding the homeless over the kid who's got a lot of big ideas and a lot of emojis in his bio.
All the flag emojis. Like a picture of who's that Peruvian Maoist that led the shining path that a lot of people love to support.
Ooh, that's a deep cut.
He's a weird. Terminally online Maoists venerate this guy. I want to be clear. He has no real popular support in Peru, where there is a very strong leftist tendency. This guy, I'm trying to remember what his name is.
Sendero Luminoso?
No, it starts with a G, I think. This is going to bug me.
Guzman.
Guzman, yeah. He did a lot of bad things. Again, and also keeping in concert with how irrelevant these debates actually are in reality. I feel like people who call themselves Trotskyists don't really understand the deep complexities of that. They really just say, I don't want to be associated with the USSR because I believe all the Black Book of Communist propaganda about it. So I'm just going to call myself a Trotskyist because Trotsky was part and parcel to the historiography.
Yes. Sorry, my dad's a Trotskyist. And my dad always says, he's an interesting Trotskyist because once again, outside of people that are really into this stuff, none of this matters, right?
No.
Which is exactly what you said, Chris. I will take the liberal feeding the homeless over someone arguing about whatever from 100 years ago. I don't care.
Show me the fucking.
Where's your praxis? Hello?
Do something.
But my dad's Go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, I should say, I think
Hi,
think of it.
Angie.
She's
Here's
here.
Angie.
Hello.
Angie, Lily, Angie, Adam,
Hello.
Angie, Adam, Chris, Angie, Chris, Lily, Chris. And
But you
I
were
want,
saying, go ahead.
and I was saying, and this is who I'm voting for next. That's Gavin Newsom.
Gavin Newsom.
So, well, Angie, what's going on? There was a leak in the basement. What happened?
We're, just like the failure of civil society in action. I'm having one of those weeks that like brings you back to church.
Oh,
It's very, very silly. We've got, I think like a ridiculously high-powered sump pump, but the pipes that are completely surrounding my boyfriend's home are clay because
nice.
that's what you should use for running water. I think that that's brilliant. Whoever did that, just feat of engineering. So they've collapsed and pretty regularly flood. All the neighbors have like given up, and so they're like, we just don't use our basement. But we haven't taken that step yet, so we're still fighting the good fight.
More
It sounds
power
like
to
you.
you.
It sounds like you live in an adobe house out in the Mexican desert or something.
I fucking wish, Chris. That would be.
That sounds nice. It's probably cheaper.
And not with these property taxes and not in the current.
No. We live in the Midwest, and we're
Midwest, huh?
everyone like.
There is a lot of clay there. That makes sense why they use the clay then, because we have tons of clay in the
I don't
Midwest.
know.
Like, makes sense
things that
logically, no, but the material, yeah.
You go to Cahokia. You're right there,
Yes,
Lily.
I'm
Just
right
go to
there.
Cahokia.
I've
It's all
been to
just
Cahokia.
clay.
That's a funny reference. On the nose.
Yeah.
Yeah, Angie, we were just talking about the difference in factions in Marxism and the people that are compatible Marxists with the US empire and the people that are not. That's what we were
What do you
getting
think?
into.
Yeah.
We're nerding out.
Got any tips?
I wanted to hear more about Lily's dad being a Trotskyist.
Oh, right.
That
Yeah.
makes me too.
He is a
My only
Trotskyist.
tip is to like, you should, if you're not name dropping Lenin within 3 hot minutes of any discussion on Marxism, my eyebrows up.
You gotta go.
And it's staying there. Like, I don't know. That is, anytime I've sent a friend a paper to peer review, they're like, Lenin mentioned based. That's my metric. That's just all like, that's all I can say.
Nice.
I think that's a great metric.
What about Tito? Wasn't Tito all right? Didn't he do something fantastic? I don't know the difference. That's why I'm asking you guys.
Statesmen are very different than like philosophers, I think. And that's something, I don't know, what we can take from a statesman is different.
I think that's the other reason why when we say Stalinism isn't an ideology, it's because Stalin was just implementing, his interpretation of Marxism, Leninism. He did write. He did have an intellectual output, but he did not like synthesize these new contributions to theory in the same way.
Also because Stalinism is an exonym, not an endonym. Stalinist is what Trotskyists call people that are not Trotskyists.
Well,
that's what they call us.
But these two fellas never met each other. So everybody said Marxist-Leninism, Leninism, Marxism. These guys were 50 years apart from each other, something like that?
Well, believe it or not, this is one of the great what-ifs of history. Lenin, to, losers like me, Lenin was in Vienna at the same time Engels was. And they almost met, but Engels fell ill and couldn't meet. So there would have been a moment. It's just like how I think about how, like, I think it was Lenin, Freud, and Hitler were all living in Vienna at the same time, and they were all frequenting the same cafe. So
interesting
moment where they were all there. But Lily, I'm curious. So do you and your dad get into arguments where you guys like throw around insults like trot or Stalinist or tanky?
No, there's no insulting. Actually, he's really good about it. My dad's very smart. And my dad is a history nerd, as most Marxists are. And this is like what I was going to say about the USSR, right? Like he will give praise to all the material changes, the material wins. but he hates authoritarianism, he hates nationalism, and he hates states as a concept. Which means that my dad says the revolution failed the day after it happened. From that point on, the revolution was ruined. And I'm like,
Wow.
okay.
The
But
same
he's
dad, but mine is the Arab Barbie brand. It's so
There's
the difference is that we don't have a Trotskyist version, so you just identify with the SSNP and pretend that that's not Marxist in ideation. So
Wow.
Interesting.
yeah,
Can you No,
Yeah.
sorry, go on. I just want to know more about can you give us a concise history or explanation of what the SSNP is, because there's so much misinformation here about that. If
the
not, that's okay.
SSNP is no. I mean, I can. I can't in the sense that I shouldn't be the spokesperson for it because I identify with the ideology. But I'm when you hear people grow up in it, like the way that we can talk about leftism in the West for hours and hours, it feels really wrong to be like the 30-second dilution of like the history of Trotsky or the history of Lenin. Anton Saadi comes up with the initial writings that become the basis for the Syrian Social Nationalist Party. No relation. And it's on the basis, like truly no relation. People make it a really big deal. There's just no relation.
But their logo looks like a swastika. It has to be. I'm sorry.
The logo, for anyone who's wondering, the logo is kind of like this, I don't know how you describe it, sort of windmill blade.
Like a star almost. It's weird.
It is. It's a little bit of an angled star. It is, I believe, Babylonian in origin. So everyone can just like, I don't know, suck it up and die. He begins writing around the time that I believe things between Syria and Egypt are looking a little bit rocky in terms of the idea of the unified Arab state. And he begins writing almost like prophetically about how Israel will move and how it desires greater Israel generally, and begins writing towards the idea of a greater Syria, a return to greater Syria. So that is the root of SSNP ideology, is unfortunately, everyone Lebanese will hate me, but it's this sort of return to what was Syria in the pre-departure from Ottoman sense. So Syria, modern day Syria, parts of Jordan, Lebanon, Palestine, arguably Syria, arguably Turkey, depending on how nationalist the person you're asking is. But the like economic and social roots of it were much more related to like healing the wounds of colonialism than I think they were about devising economic theory in the same way that Lenin was or other writers were.
So it wasn't as materialist as other, or is that not fair?
No, I feel like it was materialist in the sense that like one of the key components of the SSNP and of Anton Saadi and many of the writers who eventually do, many of them kind of merge into writing about the Ba'athist ideology that then takes over the Syrian state. Michel Aflaq, who founds the Ba'athist ideology, comes out of the same traditions that Anton Saadi does. But where they differ is Anton Saadi's fixation on identity. He was very keen on kind of eliminating the focus of sect. The big principle within SSNP, like, I don't know how to, like, couple culture was coupling outside of your sect, which is a bit taboo in the Arab world, even now, significantly so. It's not an easy, like, issue to broach within families. So
Stop.
A lot of
that's the party she says she's not talking about. She's not talking about that party. This
Which
is like
one?
this is the bad one.
That's the bad one. That it's like almost a swastika.
Yep.
No, this is it.
Vaguely.
Right?
This is the one that she's like, people will tell you, oh, it's this and they're the same, but they're not. It's not the same thing. Because these guys are like fascist social nationalists.
Oh
Yeah,
no,
it says right here.
these are us. We're just very poorly painted and have very
Wait, so
bad-
this is you?
This
Who
is the
is saying all this stuff about you guys then?
The thing is, when you say us, guys, there is one building in Beirut. There's maybe 20 people manning it. I think I know of a net total of like 500 active members. When I say know of, like this is not an active party in any way that is meaningful and real.
Oh, okay, I misunderstood. My bad.
That it's like, we don't have a meaningful equivalent to it in the US, but it's like, if you could be a reasonable leftist in Congress and exist, this is the equivalent of that, where they were, for the most part, ousted from Syria under the Ba'athist regime because of the whole kind of return to Greater Syria. I don't know. It's just a very, like, everyone in the region did not want this to exist because it meant confronting something that was very difficult. Most of what Antoine Saadi wrote about Israel has come to pass in terms of like the way that they would operate in Palestine and the way that they would seek expansion in Lebanon and the way that they would seek to dismantle Syria slowly but surely. So I don't know. No one in the Middle East knows how to write policy for shit. So.
Wow. I always learn a lot about.
Oh, sorry, go on.
I was just saying, I always learn something when you guys come by. I'm always happy to have all you guys come by.
Thank you, Angie.
The Syrian.
If I'm wrong, Jolani just banned the SSNP outright, correct? Or...
I believe so, but it's important to note that, like, from, oh God, I really can't, the early, like, 5 months of the new Syrian government feel like I was just being punched in the face for a while. I want to say around December or January of 2025, they banned all other political parties anyway. So, like,
nice. Good
moment
move.
That
Good move.
took office and established him as the interim. He was interim president. I believe they refer to him as transitional president now, when they have the asterisks. But at the time, yeah, I mean, he was like, no more parties, please. Thank you.
Well, I saw Josh Landis post a new article from something that Jelani is basically giving all executive control as to where state investments are going to go. More so than Assad did, by the way.
I think it's really, like, there is a fundamental issue I have with anyone who's, Charles Lister can go to hell, anyone who's writing about Syria right now, because nothing has changed in terms of policy. So to pretend that, it would be like if Hitler was killed and then baby Hitler took over. It's just not the same. France is still occupied, but we just have a new guy there. That's functionally what has happened to the Syrian state. And I feel very confused because even people who were pro-liberation and pro even HTS towards the beginning of their rule are kind of now being like, hey, I noticed you're imprisoning us at similar to or exceedingly higher rates than the former regime.
Yeah.
But then why is why are there so many US Syrians that still will bravely wave the FSA flag or proudly wave the FSA flag? Like why is there that disconnect still that I'm at least anecdotally observing? I could be wrong on that.
No, I mean, I have many thoughts, but I say this to friends of mine who are confused as to why more Lebanese people were not like anti the ousting of Assad. People hated Assad. Like, there's just no getting around that. And unfortunately, people associate that flag with him more than they do with our country, which, like, for any, like, the crash course history is that the current flag is the flag that was given to Syria under French occupation. So people hold it as like the first Syrian flag in that it was the first set of colors to represent this geographic configuration of what is now referred to as Syria. But the now former Syrian flag, the red striped flag, was the flag that Syria gave itself under the unified Arab states. So that's why it matches many of the other Arab states, because they were made in order to reflect a singular Arab entity. So despite the fact that that unified Arab state fell apart, Syria maintained that flag in just an attempt to establish its sovereignty and to hold true to, I mean, like, Arabness was a fundamental part of the Syrian Arab state. I don't know.
No, it was literally called the Syrian Arab Republic, right?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That was, but that flag no longer like was attached, which that was, it's the fault of the regime in the way that they taught history. But
is that accurate?
Yes. Yes, I think so. But I mean, like my dates towards the end of occupation are hazy. But yeah, I would say that.
I love that we had for 2 months, Syria had a Uyghur separatist, a French Uyghur separatist flag in the bottom left-hand corner there.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
I'm not sure about all of these in terms of accuracy, but yeah, no, they're very comically funny. In most of the period Syrian dramas, you will see the French flag, the actual like state French flag, and then the now Syrian flag in the background, because that's what would be in the offices of French colonial officers, guys. But people associate with that flag because they have been so thoroughly traumatized by both Assad regimes, in the same way that the Lebanese people were so traumatized by the occupation of Lebanon by Hafiz al-Assad, that there was just no, I don't think there was going to be like a cognitive repair there that would allow for any reasonable revolutionary action to happen. I don't know what we do with that going forward in terms of how we plan wars and how we plan our strategies as leftist thinkers who want to be anti-imperialist. But like, I think being anti-imperialist at the cost of your neighbor's throat is not the way to go, is the lesson we should take out of Syria and Lebanon.
No. Yeah, I think it's just more imperialism then. You're just robbing Peter to rob Paul. I don't know. What do you think? I don't know much about Syria, but was there ever a time that it wasn't under some kind of occupation or
Like
monarchy?
we voted for independence and like all voted unanimously in 1928, and then France was like,
Really?
it wasn't given the opportunity. At any point where Syria did elect a government, that government was essentially just like
Didn't
not
they?
given the opportunity to thrive.
Usually they offer to let you buy it, like in Haiti's case, right? They'll and then you pay them off for 100 years.
Syria never had anything for the colonizer to take beside its material resources. This is written, I think, really well in, I want to say it's Philip Khoury's book on Syria and Mandate. He documents very carefully the difference between colonial officers' documentation of Syria and Syria and Lebanon in terms of extraction. And the French officers were writing in terms of like what they want to see 10, 15, 20 years from now in Lebanon, the concept of creating a Christian homeland in the Middle East with Lebanon. This was truly beyond the idea of like a Western military outpost, supposed to be maybe the Israel of the Middle East. Like there's an argument to be made that Lebanon was originally intended to be this sort of like Western haven within this land. But Syria was much more politically rooted. It was larger. It had just larger populations that were much more diversely interwoven. They had to very carefully draw ungodly governance in order to separate people by sect, and then slowly whittle away at a lot of the political unity that Syria pre-state had created around itself. The idea of like Syrian nationalism predates the modern Syrian state, in that like like the concept of
nationalism is quite popular with human beings. They love this stuff. They can't get enough of it.
Well, I don't necessarily mean nationalism in the sense of national pride, what we think of in a like Westphalian state perspective, but I mean nationalism in the sense of we've never had a formal Syrian state unless you consider prehistoric times. Like we have been perpetually occupied, but under every empire that has occupied us, this little pocket of Syria, Lebanon, Palestine, Jordan, Egypt has been the breadbasket of every empire. The golden age of the Ottoman Empire happened in Damascus. Like it just, that was this sort of bubbling point when it comes to every single field of development. So they had to work very hard to almost intentionally break the will of the Syrian people, both in the material term of economic pursuit of quality of life, pursuit of just like material gain, and then politically in terms of a unified identity and a desire to hold a state and hold that state to a specific like level of power in its region. So by the time that Hafiz al-Assad takes over, he's governing people who see themselves as like Sunni or Shia or Christian first, and have endured a couple of coups by this point and very little security outside of like the colonial framework. So many people who have been able to have gone elsewhere for education and like just to get a foothold in the world. And then you end up with essentially a totalitarian, which like one could argue is what you need coming out of any colonial context, that establishes complete order at the cost of many of the steps of ideal state making. So we end up
this is Hafez.
Yeah, the father.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So we end up kind of jumping several steps of reconciliation, going from Assyrian people that are like really segmented and traumatized by the experience of colonialism, and frankly still like experiencing colonialism, if we want to talk about the Jolan and many of the areas in the south that regularly experience Israeli aggression. As well as if my dad heard me, he would, as well as the Turkish occupied Northeast. We would like, there has never been a time for the Syrian people to reconcile, to return to political thought, and then to put that political thought into action domestically, let alone regionally or internationally.
What do you do then? How do you motivate them? You got to get them all riled up on something, nationalism or
I think that it's motivation,
religious fervor.
We have this like understanding in the West, I think, that we need to like get out the vote. They don't need to be persuaded that their conditions are not ideal. Like they really do know that.
Yeah. Well, you gotta have a plan though. It's like the French Revolution. They're like, we're upset, and then they start killing people, and then there's like a power vacuum, and nothing actually happens. And then you got to Occupy Wall Street. I was just peters out without anything actually happening.
But I
sell them on an idea.
I will say this, though, and this is something that was pivotal to my thinking. When I was in college, I took a MOOC, massive open online course with a historian of the French Revolution. And he said that when it came to the terror, there's this overemphasis on placing Robespierre as like the sole architect of all the massacres that happened. And he said that's what the people who were active participants in the terror and all its excesses did, was scapegoat Robespierre and then have him take the fall for it by literally beheading him. And Angie, I'm wondering if that is also how we talk about both Bashar and Hafez, in that we sort of displace all of the dysfunctions and excesses of Ba'athist rule onto these individuals, when it was a more, I don't know if it could be called an ideological state building project or what, but like, I don't know if that's fair, or I don't know.
I think that like even the French Revolution, as bloody as it was, like,
it's my favorite sitcom, by the way.
I was just thinking, this looks like a sitcom, like screen, like Fridays on ABCs.
For the longest time, this family was, even amongst people who disagreed with them politically, like people still saw them as the kind of Kennedys. Like at the very least, they knew how to present themselves. They knew how to be diplomats. They knew how to handle like money. People praised Asma al-Assad for her work with nonprofits. And like, now we know better, but people like, they knew how to play a good game. No, I don't think that applies for Hafez. I feel like if anything, he knew what he was doing a little bit too well sometimes. My history is nowhere near as good as like my father's or my uncle. Like that generation have a much more real experience of what it was like to be in Syria in the 70s and 80s. The way that I have always seen it and been taught it, Hafez was dealing with like a state of chaos. If an individual with for anyone who like has never experienced the Ba'athist ideology, what it is in essence is just Arabness as the primary point of the Syrian state, as the primary point of Syrian citizenship is Arabness. So to be Arab, to be born on Syrian soil, to be seeking to contribute to Syrian soil, to contribute to Syrian culture, like those were the tenets of being a Syrian citizen, and were what they often evaluated things like naturalizing people into Syrian citizenship. Not that happened often, but so it was a very like meritocracy branded form of political ideology that was rooted around, for lack of like a real better term, isolationism and self-protection. It was about establishing Syria to a position of production and development, that it could support itself, that it could develop and just provide a quality of life akin to like the Human Development Index, and not be concerned about threats to sovereignty in the same way that Lebanon and Palestine frequently were.
So when that project started to go south, what role did the fall of the USSR play in that? Since the USSR was, I mean, that's why there's still a Russian military base in Syria.
I don't know. I mean, like, to answer that question, like, where do you see that project going south being? Because to me, that project went south when Bashar took office, not prior to that. Like, yeah, we could argue that it went south with the Lebanese occupation, but I don't know. Knowing Hafiz al-Assad, he wouldn't have done anything else. And we would be talking about a very different history had that not happened, for better or for worse. So to me, the failure was in not creating political potential for a successor. Because if there had been political potential for a non-Assad successor that could have carried on and progressed in the ideology of the Ba'ath, I think that we could have gotten to a place of genuine political reform that didn't come from scarcity. But we never got there because Bashar opted to liberalize, and he did not come from a political background. He was not groomed for this position. The brother who was intended to take over was killed in a tragic car accident. And this guy just had to be like plucked out of his eye clinic in Great Britain to come back and be president of Syria. And for like, he held it down. He never left the country throughout the war. They were still regularly visiting and attending various religious gatherings and masjids, mosques, churches throughout all of Syria for religious holidays throughout the war. Like, he, for whatever it's worth, he put in his time, but he just wasn't a statesman. He was not a political thinker. He didn't understand how to operate a state. I regularly question how much of Bashar al-Assad's Syria was Bashar al-Assad's Syria and not the party's Syria. I just don't think we'll ever know with him.
All right.
Thank you for that. So that's a lot for everybody to chew on, for after being told that, you know, this is all a revolution to oust, a glorious, blessed revolution to oust the dictator Assad, you know.
Which, like, maybe it was, but I mean, I was probably 12 when the revolution started, and I think that I went from, okay, we're
10 whole dollarinis.
That's
Anyway.
gonna buy you. That's gonna buy you 0.005, you know, carton of gas.
After the taxes and the fees, I think YouTube takes 700%, and then so I'll be in debt by the end of it. So
that's a McChicken worth of money. That's hilarious.
Yeah.
Oh, we're all boycotting McDonald's anyway.
Yeah. So that's the serious scoop. Of course, here, look, I'll put Lily in the hot seat now. Look at, there you go. Now you're in the hot seat.
Yeah. Now you tell us all about, you give us, you know,
What's the scoop? What are you working on now? What's your game plan? You're going to be back out in the trenches, going to labor organizing, fighting the union busters, trying not to get beat up like Woody Guthrie. What's your
God bless Woody Guthrie.
Yeah. What's your deal?
I would love to go back to Cuba. The 100 Years of Fidel is a big deal. I don't know if I'll end up subpoenaed. Like I said, this is also like up in the air in the beginning stages of this process right now. Like, I have no idea what's going to happen, but I'd love to go to Cuba again. Yeah, labor organizing, I need to get more involved with that. I really want to get involved with tenants unions. I think they're amazing. A lot of them are unfortunately not associated with labor unions, though, because a lot of labor unions are not very radical anymore, as we're all well aware. I'm not going to.
Communists are in tenant organizing. Most communists
yeah.
are in labor in the U.S. at least.
Exactly. But we're having big things. So I was just in New York, and I was in New York largely because I am very fascinated by Zoran Mamdani, and I say fascinated as a neutral term. I was very excited about him last summer. I am now having
I'm hot
feelings
for him.
I was gonna say like derogatory.
And so I was there, and I did a little bit of work with the people there that are wanting to ban the 24-hour workday. I'm not sure how much you guys know about that, but in New York City, women home healthcare workers are forced to work 24-hour shifts. They get paid for 13 of those hours. They are legally able to not be paid for their full shifts because they're expected to be like sleeping and eating for parts of them, but them work for patients that require round work in like slave lessons. How they compare it, because they're not getting paid and they are working that entire time, but they also end up disabled because they are not getting rest. They're working these shifts multiple days in a row, 70-hour weeks, blah, 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 blah. So Mamdani, the guy you're hot for, campaigned on getting this abolished. And he's been talking about it for years now. And something happened and he walked back on it. And he's now working to not get it passed. So that's not very cute. I'm not into that.
No more X's and O's for him. I'm telling you that much.
No hugs and kisses for Mamdani.
Tear down the shirtless Mamdani poster.
Yeah, I got the poster back here. It's coming down. Sad.
Homer Simpson. It's very American of you. I love the Homer. That's great. So I got to work with them. That was awesome. Tenant union stuff. Did you?
Yeah, I painted that.
You painted that?
Yeah, I painted these.
I'm into it. Can I get one?
Yeah, cartoons
from Germany.
Yeah, I'll send you some cartoons. Yeah. All right, absolutely. Send you. That'd be wonderful to get you some art. Yeah, okay.
And I'm also working on an anti-BDS bill, anti-BDS bill here. Well, I'm in Missouri right now, but in Illinois, we're trying to get the anti-BDS bill repealed, and hopefully we'll be able to do it. Illinois was the first state to put it into practice a decade ago, and they're hopefully going to be the first state to get rid of it.
Illinois was the first?
That's what I'm working on. First state in the U.S., yep.
Why?
Wow.
That's so
because
random.
if BDS was big in Chicago, then they would have burned this country down. Y'all
yes.
know Chicago Arabs.
There are a ton of Zionists. So Zionists to the max in Chicago. It's crazy.
Really?
They have to
I had
be.
no idea.
Well,
They're the Iron Dome. They're all they have. Like, they are all that is there.
Yes. It's horrible. Coming from LA, I was like, oh, yay, like Midwest, like, more what? No.
You actually went on Canary Mission right now, because I went to school in Chicago for a period. There's like a really high proportion of Chicago med students on Canary Mission.
Very interesting.
I'm convinced that for a period, maybe between like 2013 to 2019, it was like one Zionist med student being like, Fadia pissed me off today. Take this, bitch. Like, I'm convinced.
If I was trying to find cool people in Chicago to hang out with, I'd be like, who's on the Canary Mission?
Yes. Yes. It's a selling point.
But why? I want to know, because Chicago has such a large Palestinian population. Like,
Indeed.
why was Illinois, that feels so randomly, why was Illinois the first state to...
Zionists have always outpowered. Yeah, and exactly. Yeah, they were like,
reason.
Because it's not just Palestinian. It's like broadly a huge Arab population, as you're well aware. So
number one in terms of demographics. I believe that it has
not Dearborn.
No.
Oh wow.
Relative to population size, I believe for the city, it has the largest proportion of general Arabs.
Oh, I see. Yeah, so they were like, we got to take them down.
Absolutely. I mean, it's the
That's
same
how they
in
are.
Michigan. It's very anti-BDS throughout all of Michigan. Like there's a very targeted policy effort in the areas where Columbus is very similar, where there's like a very old Syrian and Palestinian community here. There's also a very old Zionist community here. They know exactly.
Weren't Midwestern Syrians the reason why Arabs are still classified
Stop
as
it.
white?
Stop it. Stop it. Shut up.
In terms of the U.S. Census, and that's it.
Yeah,
in terms of the U.S. Census.
Here's the thing. In my head
We're
canon,
getting so controversial with the series.
in my head canon, he was Lebanese. This happened prior to the like actual partition of Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Palestine. A general Syrian immigrant in the US became a cop, immediate loser, and shot someone, immediate loser. And they were like, what do we do here? Because the person he shot was black. So they were like, do we charge him? Like, we're just not sure where to proceed. And they decided they didn't have to charge the cop if they classified Middle Eastern people as white.
Oh man. Yeah.
I had no idea it was that sorted. Holy shit.
Essentially, what it came down to was that they could argue self-defense better if they classified him as a white man.
Yeah, that checks out.
Now I have to check Asian every time I take anything census related.
Wow.
I had no idea that was the reason. Oh my God. I thought it was just
very interesting.
Guys. No.
I was told that story by a Syrian as it was just them fighting for equal representation and like opportunity.
Equal representation to like carry these arms, maybe, but
dear God, that's
terrible. No. Syrian immigrants never done anything good abroad, guys. Like, I'm sorry. We all need to go home.
Except for this podcast, except for this live stream.
Yeah. Can you guys stop coming to Germany and like stabbing kindergarten children? That'd be nice. I'm just kidding. It's a joke. It's a joke. No.
Is that what the AFD is telling you in your neighborhood, Chris?
No, This is the main, in the UK, all over. This is what they're saying.
What's really funny is that at the height of the migrant crisis, there was like a clear demarcation in which Syrians were being given refugee visas and given permission to leave that country and which were not. And I don't know how to put this like politely or in a way that is politically correct, but the people who generally had degrees or had ways of making a living and were upstanding citizens who were generally like seeking refuge for life and limb were not the ones that were receiving visas. The proportion, this is coming from like family members of mine who did make it out to places like Sweden and Germany and Switzerland and France and would go to refugee centers in order to help out and give back because they were like, I speak the language, these are my people. And they would go and the people there were unrecognizable to them. They were like speaking in ways that were unrecognizable. They were dressed in manners, like the ways that they would speak in terms of like derogatory language and religious language were unrecognizable to them. So all I can say is that I have it on very good authority that there were levels of selection that favored extremist populations within Syria. To me, that seems like a great way to then stir PR about your migrants being violent and terrible, if that's kind of what you want to stir. But that's also a great way to ensure that the people who maybe have an incentive to create a different discussion about Syria are stuck dying in the homeland, while those who are willing to carry your water are getting out.
I met two different kinds being in Germany, and I met one years ago in Italy, and his name was Tarek, and he escaped, but he was well educated, obviously from a good family, spoke 3-4 different languages, still my friend to this day, hell of a guy. And then the other person was straight, like, off the boat or whatever, and he was my neighbor, and I would like help him move and do stuff, and we had tea one time. But he would like burn furniture that he found in the yard, like IKEA furniture that has this chemical lacquer on it and stuff. And he was, it was a different kind of person. then, but
Did
I
he
don't
ever
say that
exist?
to say it was carte blanche, but like I say that as someone who has a large ass family that have been applying in perpetuity to countless nations. My grandfather is a priest, guys. He has not received a US visa in over 15 years. The priests are
wow.
they're a frightening class, I know. But
It's
no,
he's Orthodox. That's the problem. If he was Pentecostal or
if he was
evangelical,
Maronite.
If he was Mormon, get one of those Mormon priests.
It's funny
all
because
right.
my grandfather does have a story about Mormon missionaries visiting him in
Here we
Syria.
go.
I think
Let's
back
hear
in
it.
like the
Yeah,
80s
put
or
it back in the hot
90s.
seat.
I've
Everyone
only
take a
heard it-
shot. Angie mentioned Mormonism. Take a
Okay,
shot.
go ahead.
I've only heard it once or twice. All I know is that they came and like you have to invite him in. Like he's a priest. That would be a bad look. So he let them come in. They're missionaries. They're doing their best to chop it up in English. My father was there at the time. I think he would have been in college or just about to start college. And then one of his younger sisters was studying English. So she's there probably like helping to translate half the time. And my dad is like bilingual French and Arabic at the time. So I don't know what help he is. But yeah, no, apparently they were looking to garner enough members to eventually start a church. And my grandfather was like, no, no. We're like just generally throughout the Middle East, none of the religions proselytize. That's not in our culture. It's between Christians and Muslims. Like one village will be 2 kilometers from the next one. And it's just not in our culture to try and convert or anything like that. We're not interested. So
I'd like to. Excuse me, sir. I'd like to talk to you today about the Quran and your soul, your everlasting
Have you
soul.
heard the good news?
Have you heard
good news?
Lily, I don't know if you can relate to this, but I spent a few years in the Midwest when I was a kid, and I was just so used to everyone, all of the friends you made, pushing you each way to try to like be their sect of Christianity specifically, so that when I like made, Muslim friends for the first time, when I like moved to a different part of the country, I was like, you guys aren't trying to convert me. What is this?
Yeah, you feel let down.
Now, if you were Shia, baby. Oh, honey.
Well,
Have you actually, I'm sorry, this is a slight tangent. Have you seen the recent app that's supposed to be coming out in the US that's like halal gambling?
I'm sorry, what? Are they trying to get prediction? Is there a Muslim Christian or Muslim prediction market?
I'm waiting for the punchline.
It's really funny. I want to see if I can find it. It's because someone made a comment that was like British Muslims are like, you have to wash your hands 15 times a day or your wudu won't be good. And if you're a woman, you have to go and sit in a corner 15 days after your period or else your prayer won't be. They're all like this. And then Muslims in America are like, hey, we just launched our halal gambling.
Halal gambling? What?
Okay.
What
so,
is
the Saudi Pro, because of one of the world's most prominent football clubs, betting platforms frequently use their name to attract sports betting odds. Sites like Odds Portal and Bet Explorers have pages dedicated to Al Hilal betting odds. Is that right?
just halal betting odds is just such a funny sentence.
Don't they just give it a name and then they're like, yeah, it's all organic and gourmet and you can just say anything. Really it's halal, guy.
For people who don't know, like to make, when you're saying something like meat, if meat is produced halal, that means that like the person who butchered and prepared the meat was using the name of God, was saying Bismillah as he's preparing it so that it is. So I want you to imagine some guy's crunching numbers. He's like on his Bismillah.
I'm picturing like an imam at a blackjack table just being like Bismillah. Like,
enough, guys.
Yeah.
Or like,
personally, I don't think that this is what the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, wanted. Most of the Quran, by the way, when we talk about spreading the good word, half of what was being spread was like, we could be clean. We could be clean, guys. We could be clean. We could have basic social networks.
We can like wash our asses in ways that Europeans still won't, like millennia later.
Yes.
We like chafing our buttholes with that sweet toilet
Charmin.
paper.
No, that's what was so interesting to me. Is just like the I don't know if it's like when you read about so many things that are, you know, practiced by Muslims today, I feel like they had very practical applications and utilitarian uses for the Muslims of Muhammad's time, where it's like even like the hijab, you know, like that would probably protect you from the sun and from, you know, just lecherous men.
Quite literally, because the hijab is not gendered. There is a hijab standard for men. So quite literally, like it was a standard of like social modesty more than it was moral modesty, I would argue.
Yeah.
So you got the hijab, the
burqa,
and the niqab,
The niqab.
and that's the big one. That's the full sheet. Okay.
Story. I actually think like Muslim women are incredible generally. I personally think I have a great deal of respect for all of my Muslim friends, most of whom, wide range, many of whom practice quite devoutly, many of whom practice somewhere on a spectrum. When I was living in Switzerland, I was walking through, I lived in, unfortunately, like a slightly wealthier area, terrible for my pockets, but great for my view. And I was walking just like, I think to get my groceries one day and saw a woman in a full niqab pushing her baby in a stroller. She like pulled off to the side. This was so cunty. I love her. She pulled up her niqab, took a puff of a cigarette, and then pulled it back down.
I mean, hey, there's nothing in the Quran about, you know.
And you know what? I'm not a man, so it wasn't haram that I saw her. And I make it a point to like whenever I see someone that's like very Arab presenting, I'm like, marhaba, salam alaikum. Like I want to give everyone a kiss. And so I was saying that as she was pulling it up, and she just kind of hit me with like a, oh sweet, like we didn't know how to.
I love it.
Bounce background interaction. When I was in Greece, I was volunteering at a refugee camp, and on the way there, we had to take a cab. It was, this is the niqab. We were taking a cab to a warehouse where we had to sort out all the clothes. We had to sort out the clothes, specifically the people donated to these Syrian refugees by their like how culturally appropriate they were. So like if you're like donating bikinis or like short skirts, most of the refugees won't be able to use that. So we had to sort them out. But on the way to the warehouse, there was a strip club. And I'm like in the back of the cab with this like, you know, like visibly Muslim people, like one's like, long beard, and like two of the women are in hijabs. And I mentioned like, guys, there's like a strip club on the way there. So, and our cab driver didn't speak English. So on our way to there, I pointed out the strip club, like, oh, there it is. And the cab driver was like, oh, you want to go here? And he like started pulling in. And I was like, no, not here. No. Just like, did you thought like all these Muslims?
We'll get you there.
To a strip club. And
Oh
I love it.
It was so funny too, because when we were there, like this was like 2016, so Trump or 2017 the second time. So like again, these like visibly Muslim people were just walking down the streets in Athens, and these like Greeks are being like, "Oh, you guys like Trump, right? Because you're American." And they're like, "He just banned us from, you know, entering the country."
Wow.
It was interesting to see how Greece and like Europe in general. Greece is interesting, at least because I feel like the mutual experience of being occupied by the Ottoman Empire, I don't know what it was. The Greek people were very generous to the refugees. I mean, obviously you had the Golden Dawn, but they were at least made illegal. They were eventually banned.
I have very like difficult feelings with Greece, because the Greek people as a culture and a state and a people are very very much indivisible from like us across the Mediterranean. There is, especially once you get into like Cypriots, there's just no difference culturally in the way that we act. When it comes to religion, I am perceived more Greek sometimes than I am perceived Arab by the right people. If I am particularly like, if I am in my religious element, like if I'm in an Orthodox space, I will be asked if I'm Greek before I'm asked if I'm Syrian. We're just not different people. There was so much cultural exchange, especially under the Ottoman Empire, that like I think the people live with a lot of cognitive dissonance between the kind of pull to be European and the very Islamophobic, generally xenophobic outlook that comes with inherently, and the understanding that they are in fact the xeno in question. Like in any other context, a Greek person would be perceived as the other by any other European.
I feel like the Mediterranean, most like European Mediterraneans are just, you get into like the Aryan territory where Chris is, and they're just like, what are you doing here? You look like you're a dirty Slav or
Truly. Well, I mean, like if you think about Germany has had a brief moment of taking pride in its Turkish population. And I'm like, that's because they're primarily like tech millionaires.
Yeah.
You're not very proud of your quite equally as large Syrian population,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because they really just trafficked the Syrians in there to fill the grunt labor,
the Turkish
shortage, which I want to, when Lily was talking about the healthcare workers working in slave-like conditions, it's worth noting that is the sector, the industry that is adding, like the only sector that is consistently adding jobs to the U.S. economy every quarter.
Everything else in general. Like if we actually wanted to get down to it, the only jobs I see having value in the United States are healthcare workers and education.
Right. And even then they're terribly paid. And that's part of the reason why there's such a demand, is because the burnout rate is so high. But one, we have crumbling schools that have been undermined for decades, where literally anyone can just go in and teach because they just need a warm body there. And we have a sick and dying population, aging population that has access to universal health care. So there is a demand for like that. But if you're trying to work in any other industry, good luck right now. And I say this as someone who is doom scrolling Indeed and LinkedIn every day. Like,
have you noticed the weird uptick in jobs in like literally the past week? I'm scared something is happening.
In what industries?
They just say that. They just say that there's jobs, the job reports. They come out with these job reports, they inflate them, and then they come back and they say, oh, there was half as many jobs as we said.
Well, yeah. But are you seeing more jobs on LinkedIn or Indeed specifically, Angie, or?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, I've been mostly between those two and Remote Hunter. It's like sweet of you to think that I'm confining myself to field at this point. I'm very much like, do I have the skill set? Do I have the energy to craft this cover letter? Mainly media communications and publishing is where I've been.
I mean, I've noticed, I'm looking in like 3 different states at this point, and it's all the same. It's like the only jobs I'm seeing are like healthcare and like part-time restaurant work. There was one job I saw where it was like literally like 8 to 18 hours a week at $18 an hour. I'm like, who do you think is going to work this job? But
someone working 2 others that are that exact same.
Right. But then even finding those, because I've applied for those jobs before and I didn't even hear back from those. But what I have noticed is there's an uptick in MLM work, like not Marxist-Leninist Maoist, everybody who is following the earlier thread, but like just like sales commission-based jobs.
A lot of commission-based. I fear contracting is going to be the new minimum wage, and I'm going to have to kill myself.
It is. My dad worked at the same company for almost 20 years. He lost his job in like October 2023, got rehired 2 years later at the exact same company, the exact same robot as a contractor after 2 years of trying to find something else. Like we're entering a period where everyone's just an adjunct because companies, I mean, in addition to overspending on AI that can actually replace workers, and the API is so expensive,
Well, see, that was my hope. My hope was that like some companies were already getting to the point where like the AI they had banked on and probably paused hiring or whatever, they were all immediately like, oh, I guess this isn't a person. I'm waiting for that. I'm like waiting for that moment.
I read
you might be waiting a long time.
I know.
Because
that would require CEOs admitting culpability, which is not, conducive to shareholder.
I don't even want culpability. I just want like tail between our legs. Can we just pretend that didn't happen? That's what I want. I won't even mention it.
Bro, I was making good money as a visual artist, doing everything from paintings to designs to all that stuff. And then AI came along, and now it's totally stupid.
I've noticed, because I read a very depressing Substack post recently about a woman who used to be in game development, and this was something she made a living on for 20 years, and then almost overnight, everything disappeared because tech has been, for so long, we were told to learn to code. That was like the guarantee for anyone who was lost or had a humanities degree. It was go learn how to code, and you can make now that was the first sector on the chopping block. And yeah, of course, that is probably, I don't think AI can do administrative tasks in a way a human can, but in terms of coding, like that is something.
They're on their way. Everything from lawyer to anything bureaucratic, assistance, translation, art, music. Like we said before, probably actors in some aspects, not the close-ups, obviously, but I mean, I see it. The utility is huge, and these guys are going to keep putting out propaganda that says the job market is fine until it's really clearly torches and pitchforks time, and everybody's out in the streets getting really upset because right now they can just squeeze the last bit of capital while making everybody obsolete. I mean, it's originally like the first industrial revolution where they had all the factories, and then all of a sudden all these people got rich. Like, well, how did these people get so rich? It's because they own the factories.
But even then, just like we're seeing now with AI, the technology that was developed in the Industrial Revolution did take decades to actually become profitable and like feasible. Like this first steam engines were around before the Industrial Revolution, but they were still inferior to like horsepower, for example. Angie, being in the legal field, what do like the lawyers you work with, are they scared that AI is going to decimate their profession? Or
I'm going to be real with you. AI isn't going to be what decimates law because they're using it. Like the fact that law doesn't matter is going to be what decimates law. Like it's going to be the fact that the Department of State can change the guidelines any day that they want and make anything a reason to deny a visa. Like the fact that rule of law, that doesn't matter. What is a lawyer going to argue? That's the point that we're getting to a Kafka, like the trial point of where you're just going to be told that this happened and now you have to pay for it. And you're going to go through like cycles and cycles of bullshit. That's where we are. The bureaucracy is going to grow so thick that the point of a lawyer is no longer relevant, and no one is going to be able to afford one. Like immigration, guys, the application for a green card right now is somewhere around just the application for adjustment itself, the form I-485. The filing fee is somewhere around $1,400. That is not including the application for work authorization, which I want to say is around $700, nor does it include the application for a travel document, which you require if you need to leave the United States for any reason. It's also not including whatever form you would have filed to make yourself eligible for the adjustment of status. So if you're there as an employee, you would file an I-140, which costs $715-ish, or you file an I-130, which I want to say costs $600 something if you're filing on the basis of like a family member who is your relation. It's so
Wow.
that's what you're paying to USCIS. You haven't paid your attorney fees yet.
And that's not even Trump's gold. What is it? His gold card, where if you pay $1 million, you can just become a citizen.
Yeah. 10 years ago, when I came to Germany, I had the choice. My wife could get citizenship in America. We get married there and then go through the process there, or go to Germany and do it there. So right away when I went, I got a 3-month visa to be in Germany for 3 months. Everybody gets it. And then you have to leave for 90 days and then you can come back. But I simply went to the courthouse, the local little rat house, they call it. And yeah, it's a great name. And I say, we're thinking about getting married. And we went in there together. We hadn't been married yet. And they said, automatic, no questions asked, extra 3 months. So I did that up, went to the United States. Turns out the United States, even if you're married, you still need to pay thousands of dollars for the application. You need to hire the attorney. You need to give blood to them, which was totally bizarre.
What?
And you pretty much stuff thousands of dollars into a manila envelope and send it off in the mail.
The medical exam is required. The medical exam is required to apply for adjustment of status. Absolutely. And it is now required prior to your interview. I believe around 5 years ago, somewhere around 2021, they changed the policy. You used to be able to take the medical exam report with you in person when you would go to interview after your form had been received. You have to mail it in. Otherwise, they will ask for a request for evidence. And I've had 2 cases in the past month that have been like pending for a year. So we sent the initial medical exam report. It's taken them over a year to process the form. Like, we're just waiting on a receipt. So we've had the receipt. We're waiting to hear whether or not it's like moving on to interview. And they're like, your medical exam has expired. Do another one.
Dear Lord. So
that medical exam costs money.
Well, it's the US. It's US healthcare. Of course it's going to. At least at Ellis Island, if they, checked you for TB or
I should also say that I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this is still the case now, but at least for the past several years, it has been the case that it is easier to get a fiance into the United States than it is to get a spouse.
Why?
Like, it is easier to apply for a tourist visa or a temporary, like a temporary non-immigrant visa for a fiance to come to the United States, marry here, or have her establish herself here, establish a history with immigration, and then apply for their permanent residency.
That would have been what we would have done, but it's still beyond that. It was still.
But
think about the logistics of that. Think about how much more you're paying for a fiance visa, and then the adjustment of the fiance visa to the I-130 to the I-485.
Yeah. I moved to Germany, okay, and then as soon as I show up, because we were married in, you go through Reno and you go through the drive-through and you're like, oh, you're married. We took that and then took it to Germany and they said, oh, you're married. That's the sacred institution of marriage. Of course you're allowed to be here with no other problems. And so I went in for one interview. I learned enough German to convince them that I was, good enough. And then I go every few years and I get sort of a refresher because I didn't apply for citizenship. I have a temporary status because they want me to say Israel is awesome when I go there now. They make me say it. They like check the box. Does Israel have a right to exist? I don't,
In Germany, you have to pledge a loyalty oath to Israel to get citizenship. I did not know that. Jeez.
Yeah, it's a real thing. I don't want to do that. So I just go back and do it. But yeah, it's better than having, the United States, they call you in for the immigration hearing and they have a Q-tip that's about 2 feet long that they stick up your ass or whatever. It's crazy. I don't know what they're doing over there, but it's not worth it. Medical procedures, taking blood, when needles get involved in border disputes, like I can't be here, so we got to take your blood. I'm not interested. No, fuck that.
So it's easier for someone with the means to like go get married by an Elvis impersonator in Vegas and just
then
fly.
go to Europe. Yeah, go to any other country that recognizes the marriage wholeheartedly. The other thing was license, like a driver's license, costs like $2,000, $3,000 in Germany. You have to get driving lessons and stuff. But in America, you just go through the drive-through, get your license, whatever. You don't even have to do driving tests, and it costs like $100. So I took my license and then brought it here. It was, yeah, that's the way to go. It's for all people trying to escape the US right now. Hey, the water's okay. It's a little bit better. I got dental insurance. I got health insurance.
We need to, you know what we should do is create an app where Americans can find like foreign spouses to flee the country.
Yeah. I was thinking about that.
I don't know how to say this in any other way, but like I would not inflict this population on anyone else.
Yeah, part of me was like,
Fair.
I was going to start an organization that helped people expats so that but then I thought, I don't want to be around a bunch of fucking Americans. My life is good now. I don't need that shit.
You just need to like, I'm sorry, there's some character building and just figuring that shit out too. Like, I'm sorry, I don't want to help you guys do that, because the people with means, respectfully, those of you in America with means to get out, sit your ass down, get a pen out, make some lists.
Yeah.
You have some things to do. I don't know. If you can afford a passport right now, you should have some things on your to-do list.
Yeah.
Well, they did a poll, and most Americans, or at least a sizable chunk of Americans, can't literally afford to either get a passport or like they can't afford to miss work to schedule an appointment to get their passport.
I've been
which
there.
is also why so many people have just been effectively disenfranchised from voting. Bro,
I lived in my van for the first 8 years. I lived in my van, and then I decided that I would to go be a hobo in a different country, and I sold the van and got passports with the money. But I also didn't make it out after that years later, but it can be done. Even the homeless people can get your fucking passport and escape if you need to.
I just think it's like so important to me on a very like genuine level. Anyone in the US or outside, like, please get your documentation no matter what it takes, because like in a world where you don't have like anything else, the US could go kaput tomorrow, and you would be a stateless person. This is coming from someone who, like, in my country, if I do not have my Syrian ID, which like I'm scared because my Syrian passport expired years ago and I never renewed it because I was like, when I'm older, when I go on my own, whatever, when I'm able to go to Damascus, when I'm able to fly into Damascus, I'll renew it then. Never did. Now all I have is my little ID card that's registered to my grandfather's house, that like it's my updated picture, but I could be rendered stateless in my home country. Get your passports, get your legal documentation. Like, don't put yourself in a position any way that you can.
Right. Then I'm going to have to tell them that Israel does have a right to exist and just get the passport, because if I get the German passport, I could go to China. I could go here. It'll be better.
But if they find that you were in somehow like, unkind to Israel, if you spoke ill of Israel, could they revoke your citizenship?
I don't know how
monitoring
people that are high up activists who are constantly in Berlin doing stuff. I think they're more the target. I'm small potatoes, but
generally is one of the hardest visas to go against across all countries in terms of immigration. Like a visa or a citizenship that is built upon marriage is one of the hardest to annul or revoke. Just saying.
Now, you're talking out of both corners of your mouth here. It's everyone avoid Americans at all costs, but also Americans, your only bet is to find...
Listen, not like go get other passports. I just think that like you guys should have your passports. You should have a legal document of yourself that is beyond your state identification and your birth certificate. Because like my birth certificate doesn't have the same date as my ID, guys. That would not be useful to me in a life or death scenario.
Wait, why?
Yeah.
What's the reason?
This is an immigrant thing. Shout out to everyone who gets it. I almost like want to do an if you know, you know. It's just very common to register your children under a different date than the one they're born. A lot of times it'll just be like the next calendar year or like whenever you can get to the nearest registration point, like they'll put that date down. For whatever reason, my paternal grandfather was like, oh, September is so late in the year. What if she like can't keep up with her grade? And so they registered me January 1st, the year after. So legally everywhere, I am a Capricorn and I am a New Year's baby.
But when do you celebrate your birthday twice?
No. I actually make a big fuss about the fact that I'm not celebrated twice. I did not find out about my legal birthday being different from my actual birthday, ironically, until we were applying for our green cards. And my parents, I think I was 9 at the time, and my parents were like, "You're old enough to fill out your own forms." So I'm September 18th, that's my birthday. The lady comes out, the USCIS, "Do you want to explain to me why your daughter has 2 birthdays?" My blood, my heart falls out of my ass. I'm like, they're going to kill me. I'm going to be shot. Fortunately, we do have, I think, vaccination records of mine from the year I was born to show that I was vaccinated prior to my legal birth.
Wow.
So
but how
you're the only person I know with 2 ages. That's cool.
Oh, you know plenty. I guarantee you're in Germany. Every Syrian you've met, you know so many January 1st babies. Guarantee. I used to tweet every single year, "Happy birthday, everybody." Like shouts out, "Let's celebrate, guys." Like tonight's our night. That was
But how did your parents get out of the how did they explain the way? Sorry, how did they explain a way that you had, other than with like how did they de-escalate the situation? The more you know, every Syrian outside the country is born on January 1st.
Yeah,
it's common enough that like it's a question on most immigration forums, like, have you used any other birthdays? Do any other documents show any other dates of birth for you? It's a common enough thing, just because it's like dates of registration can fuck up. So like if you're born in a village on Wednesday and it takes your dad 2 days to get to the nearest city where he can register you, they might put your date of birth as Friday. So it's like little things like that it's not illegal to be registered as a date different than what you were actually born on. It's illegal to represent something that you cannot prove. So fortunately, it is literally just vaccine records. It is my newborn vaccinations that are the only record I have, because unfortunately the hospital that I was born at has been very severely damaged and my records probably no longer exist in Aleppo, Syria. So the only record I have of my existence prior to the year 2000 is my vaccines, my infant vaccines.
That's insane.
Wow. That's kind of nice in some ways. I'm sure it has some advantages at some point, you know.
But
I don't want a paper trail.
Well,
listen,
no, but
not really, because my paper trail is just inaccurate to me. It meant that like in the US, I got my driver's license 6 months later than everyone else, or than I should have. It meant I didn't get to vote in the election that I should have gotten to vote at, which like the election
okay.
was, like it was okay. I wasn't very passionate, but
you didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton? Wait, you would have been 18.
Yeah.
You would have been 18.
I would not have been able to vote in that election, specifically because I got my citizenship a month before I turned 18 or so. And it was because my dad was sworn in as a citizen the same day, January 17th, 2017, when Trump was being sworn into office. Wow. So
your dad and Trump, they're just leading parallel, perfectly perpendicular lives.
It's like frightening. Yeah, I don't know. Much to think about.
That's crazy. I mean, Well, now I'm thinking there's a whole subset of the US population of the like RFK Maha moms who aren't vaccinating their kids, where their kids don't have a paper trail if something like this happens.
I hate to do it again. Everybody get ready to take a shot. There's a very large culture within several sects of Mormonism that don't register their children at all. Several sects of, I'm imagining, like many offshoot religions that are a little new agey now and are off the, I don't know.
Interesting.
When you weren't here, I mentioned the thing I sent you about the legislator declaring a countrywide day of prayer for everybody who's losing power from the data center, who's, you know, experiencing problems from the data centers in Utah. This is what Mormonism, theocracy in the United States actually looks like, guys.
Such a wonderful thing. I got some interesting news here because last week we talked and we said, we were talking, are humans bad or are they just misunderstood with bad habits and stuff? So I did some digging. And I found some interesting facts here. Both. It's both. You were right. 90% of the people, the behavior is avoidable. 8 to 12% though of the population are Machiavellian, or you said narcissistic, or the other one, psychopathic. And they pass these traits on. So 50% of them will pass the traits on to their kids, having more psychopaths and people like that. Now, what about the people who fall for the 30% or so who go along with whatever it is out of fear or out of sycophancy? So anywhere between 10 to 30% will also will go for it. I got like a little graph here, but I can bring it up. 40 to 60% have a heritable permanent fixture. So they're like sociologically dangerous in the fact that they could be swayed at any time. So 8 to 12 with the predatory stuff, 15 to 25% sycophants, and then up to maybe 60 to 70% like begrudgingly compliant with horrible atrocities. But like you said, with society and everything, 90% of this would be avoidable. If the other thing I found, which was interesting, long-term studies showing that the Dutch hunger winter of 1944, 1945 actually made them so they passed on elevated rates of neonatal issues, schizophrenia, cardiovascular disease, that it plays into my thing. We were talking, are white people just rotten or is it something they did? But it can be heritable. These horrible things that happen to people can be heritable. And the other thing was the Holocaust offspring studies found also neurobiological evaluations of Holocaust survivors passed on their trauma, basically. And so we might be getting worse, is what I'm saying.
But is it our fault?
No, I think
material conditions molding
conditions. So the underlying thing that I found was that the precarity and scarcity that was created originally that made us first go to war, that don't exist anymore, the scarcities that don't really exist. All the famines have been probably man-made for the last 1,000 years, except for maybe biological events like when the volcano exploded and shaded out the world for 6 years or whatever it was. Most of the famines are probably man-made, or, mishaps, happy little accidents. I forgot where I was going with that.
Well, Mike Davis's whole book called Victorian Holocausts, which I recommend everybody here read, is all about how the British Empire manufactured famines in places the Bengal famine, right? And as much as people want to say, "Oh, communism, no food," haha, no, communism is literally the reason why those countries are no longer experience famines.
I more in context of technological advances too. Like we're just not going to have more scarcity ever again. That's not going to be. And the ones that
with the crazy closing of the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, it'll be for other reasons. It'll be for
in a very similar way. Like that manufactured scarcity is manufactured scarcity. Mm-hmm. I just think like the bottom line of all of it is that, like, I'm glad you brought up neonatal studies, because it's like, yeah, what is a brain growing in utero going to grow and develop if it is in utero growing in an environment under sanctions, or growing in a uterus that is actively experiencing misogyny and patriarchy and racism? Like,
Sure.
what is that doing on the cellular level to that fetus? I don't know. We don't know enough of it. So, like,
It's stress. Yeah.
and we know enough about, like, what stress and things like starvation or depression or just the basic experiences of a mother can do to an offspring in terms of long-term effects like attachment disorders and things like that. So I don't I feel really, really confident in the idea that, like, in a world where much of the manufactured strain and power disparity that exists in our world didn't exist the way that it does, things, even words like psychopath and sycophant, I don't know that they would hold the same meaning or weight that they do now. Like, I don't know that psychopathy would be a thing in our minds. I don't know whether sadism would be something that would come naturally to the human mind if there
Only
weren't
a
imperial
small,
conditions.
but well, apparently only 8 to 12% without any outside factors. You still have individual variability of brain types and with various degrees of wiring and hormones and everything like this. So you're bound to get a few Jeffrey Dahmers and what have you. But no, for
Are
the
we?
most part, well, the Milgram experiment showed that what was it? 60 to 80% of the people would totally electrocute their own family members if they were told to by an authority figure.
That was, yeah, like, that was a study on authority. And I think that tells us more about the average person's willingness to allow evil than it does about, like, the stray cases likeliness to ex nihilo develop evil. Because I would
Sure.
almost even
These
argue
are
that,
two different types of evil, like a
sure,
stupidity kind of, or a scared ignorance and fear. But like I said, I think it's 8 to 12.
it's apathy as opposed to, like, I don't know, sadistic empathy, right? Apathy being like
Or
allowing.
self-preservation as well. Don't, like me and my
I would
family
lump that
over.
into apathy, to be honest. Like,
Yeah.
an apathy to the violence that happens around you, so long as you maintain your
Yeah, it
safety.
would just be justified. But yeah, absolutely.
Sure. I I would I don't know how much of that, like, bleeds over. Like, the first psychopath to me, if we even wanted to get almost religious with it in the way that maybe, like, ancient man would have, Cain and Abel, the violence of Cain towards Abel comes out of this power dynamic wherein Abel is favored by divinity. Like, there is this, and race scholars of early Christianity in the West use the story of Cain and Abel to describe the people of Africa and to use that as the civilizing mission story of, like, the people of Cain and the descendants of Cain were given this black skin, this curse of the sin that they committed. And that later is also, like, connected to oh god, the one son of Noah, I believe.
Shem or
Thank
Shem,
you.
Shem, Shem.
Exactly. Yes. It's a very similar narrative comes out of that story. So, like, there's all of these little moments where I'm, like, fairly certain violence has perpetually been a reaction to something
Something.
happening, even in our configurations of myth. Like, we're not able to imagine human violence, human wrath, human psychopathy coming out of nothing.
Hmm.
I don't know.
Well, it has to. Well, we share 99% of our DNA with the damn bonobos, as you know, um, and the chimps as well. Like they will hunt down and eat another chimpanzee's face because he got into his territory. Now, this seems from other animals' perspectives, a little extreme and like a very excessive waste of energy. But especially if they're not specifically living in scarcity, which they found that they're not, they're just doing it over something as vague as territory and tribalism. You see the tribalism seems to be embedded in them. So,
well, even then it's, I mean, at least like I'm just thinking of in terms of like when Europeans were visiting Africa before it was really completely, you know, colonized, there was, we've all heard the story of the, you know, cannibal tribes of Africa. The fact is there were some tribes who practiced cannibalism in different forms, and there were some who just didn't. So when we talk about people like literally raiding, you know, like killing and eating or enslaving their enemies, it didn't happen across the board. There's no universal reason.
We also, like, the accounts that it happened are from motherfuckers like Christopher Columbus in the Americas. And
in terms of Caribs, yeah.
Like, no, even in Africa, like many of these accounts are colonial, and I'm gonna take their word. Like, it is much of the. I say this because like every girl has had a cannibal fixation at some point in her life, and if she says she hasn't, she's lying. The history of cannibalism in human history is much more historically in ancient world aligned with like rituals of closeness and concepts of familial taboos and things like that than it has been about like warrior aesthetics or, you know, like that kind of kill and eat your enemy. Much of that history comes from the colonial era. And I don't know if they're the people that we want reading history from.
Well, the Mayans did cut people's heads off and kick them around like soccer balls and roll them downstairs like bowling balls.
I think for me, like, this is a weird tangent to go on, but like Europeans were also practicing cannibalism when they were like snuffing up mummies. Yes.
Medical cannibalism, absolutely.
Medical cannibalism, like, yeah. And even Christianity.
Hey, relax, man. It's medicinal.
Well, medical cannibalism is kind of a thing around the world. Like I believe that it's rooted to an extent in Chinese medicine that like what is ailing is what will heal you. So like blood heals blood, water will heal water. Like those kinds of thoughts were the
people that are pregnant take the placenta pills too. Now that my friend he takes the placenta as a thing. That's yeah.
But that's also why, again, when we think about the binary between primitive and civilized, like the very idea of a vaccination, like inoculation was first successfully practiced in China by taking the scabs from smallpox and then just with a giant, like, you know, blow device, just like putting the scabs into the nostrils of the person. This is true. This is like the first recorded human history recorded of like the prototype of vaccination. That's what you would inoculate, and it worked. And that's, again, you know, when we think about like medical cannibalism, could that be considered a form of cannibalism to a certain extent? I don't know. It's the way we think about it.
Is it vegan? Is it vegan? I have to know.
Vegan cannibal.
I was vegan for a period and used to have arguments with people because I had a certain friend who like had a thing for like poking at if I would ever drink human blood. And I got to a point where I was like, listen, I think the crux of veganism might be consent. If the thing could consent, then maybe.
I said,
if an animal possessed the power of speech to tell me yes.
Yeah, I was talking about.
Well, because like you're going to draw the line at lactation. I actually think this is an argument that's been brought to me because it's like you can't tell me a baby isn't vegan.
Well, like one of the big things is like shit, like animal shit. Technically, you don't need consent. They're leaving it behind. They don't need it. But at the same time, if you start to depend on it, then you might be exploiting that animal just to get the shit and manipulating his environment in order to get what you need out of him and exploiting him.
But that's also why, like, when we talk about, wait, I had a thought. I lost it. Shoot. Cannibalism, shit, monkey shit.
Eating medicinal cannibal
blood.
Like he rewinds.
I'm trying to. I had a thought I was going to respond to. I lost it. I mean, the monkey poop coffee thing. I could never That I could never do that.
That might be my cue to call it a night.
Yeah, we've
Yeah,
hit
I know.
every topic.
We've hit
We're all
monkey poop.
We did
coffee.
it. We did the full thing. 10 minutes to spare. I got.
Damn it.
Yeah. She said, by the way, she said she had a great time and that she cut out, and that was it. I was worried that I said the wrong thing. I get a little dark. Maybe
Like, did we
chased her away.
exclude her too much when?
Maybe, but you know what? I'm
What did
sure
we do
she'll
wrong?
be okay with it. She's wonderful, and she's got the best of intentions. It seems like she's really cool, and she's going to help us capture that Gen Z demo.
Gen Z. Which I think, Angie, you're technically Gen Z too. It's just you don't.
Oh yeah,
Are you Gen
she's.
Z?
I'm afraid. I fully believe that like anyone born after 1996 but before 2000 is like, yeah, we're technically Gen Z, but like I remember what a fax machine is, and I had to use it at a certain point.
I still
I don't
use
know,
it.
guys. I wasn't able to turn on my phone and computer at the same time. Like that feels like that should be the marker. But what can I say? That, and I think like having brothers that are so much younger than me has aged me. Like they're in the Gen Alpha.
You might as well be Gen X if we add up.
Yeah,
the age
we'll
gap between
we're
you.
moving you up.
To
Moving you up. I'm going to write a petition.
12
We're going to move you up.
Yeah, between me and my oldest brothers. Yeah.
That puts you in the 40s, right? No, 30s. Yeah, 30s.
Yeah. So what, you guys going to come back and do this again next week?
Should be, yeah.
Sounds like it.
Barring any other, biblical deluges in Columbus, Ohio.
Is that where you are? You're in Columbus?
I've been
Andrew?
doxxed.
Sorry. Well, you mentioned it earlier. You mentioned it earlier.
No, you're completely fine.
Columbus.
Okay,
If
sorry.
anything, if someone ever like sends me a bomb or something, that'll give me a reason to move. So
I've been to Columbus. It's all right. Nice thrift
sorry,
stores.
that sucks.
It wasn't. The Cincinnati is where it's at. No, I don't know.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. I could have sworn you said it earlier.
No, you're completely fine.
Okay.
Truly.
I'll tell you where I am. We're still on stream. Yeah. I'm in Germany, central Germany, a little town called Witzenhausen. There, I doxed myself.
I'm gonna show up.
Bring it. Bring it. I'll box your ears. I'm crazy. I'm the craziest guy in my neighborhood. That's true.
I'll be coming from the US. I'll have a gun.
Yeah. Good luck going through Zoll with that. They're going to take that from you. Get one that's 3D printed. They won't track that.
I'll assemble it all in.
Get a Lego. Do it with Legos.
The FBI just entered the chat. All right, we'll sign off, and we're going to talk
here.
right. Send me your money and send me your best wishes. Everybody signing off. Bye.
Bye.